Good afternoon all. Althea, good afternoon. Christopher Coffey, greetings. Patricia Reed, good afternoon. Shelton Lewis, Leon Graves, good afternoon, my friend. Margaret Thomas, Rookman Gavadine, hi Rookman. Nicola McNichols, my friend, greetings. Claire Carrington, hi Claire. Elizabeth Lakai. Yes, Claire, my week was good until I went to Parliament on Friday. Elizabeth, my week was good until, Friday was 14 hours of penance. Duly noted, Nicola. What is that? Benik, is it? Nikom? PF Cutters, Heather Lee. What is that? Cropperino? Sarah Richards, Jennifer Ashby O'Cooley, John Keto, J. Dimples, Jacqueline Phillips, Nadia Dixon, good afternoon, love you all. Terence Cummings, Christopher Sylvester, Janice Batiste, Idesh, Marlene Pantin, Kenneth Gabriel, good afternoon, Andy Dexter Tweets. I see that the trolls haven't arrived yet. Kishan Ali probably having lunch, and I'm sure he will jump on soon enough. So let me jump into it. I don't want to stay too long today, and then I see that on So just a couple of things I wanted to treat with today. Well, I have to treat with the blue elephant in the room for the week, albeit I'd prefer not to, because as far as I'm concerned, the less said about Tobago, the better. All right, but PNM got a good shellacking, 15-1. Well, 15-0, sorry. Was it a surprise? And maybe that was the problem. All right, I think part of the reason why the turnout from PNM supporters in Tobago wasn't what it could have been and should have been was because I believe that PNM supporters believed that all was lost. I don't think there was, notwithstanding the momentum and the energy in the campaign towards the end, I don't think that was able to translate into votes and convince sufficient people that the PNM could wrest control of the THA from the TPP. And maybe some people just say, well, it doesn't make no sense going to vote because, the TPP, that the wind was in their sails and the momentum was with them. But I looked at the numbers. I'm not going to spend too much time on that issue, and it has nothing to do with me being upset about what happened in Tobago, right? But I had to deal with enough of that, and we had to deal with enough of that in the Parliament on Friday, because for those persons who spoke from the other side, the government side, everybody had to throw in their jab about Tobago and Blue Wave and Tobago, and then the off-mic conversations that were had downwind the speaker, where constant crosstalk that you all don't hear because the microphones are off, from our colleagues on the other side about Tobago till the point I had to ask them, how long will you keep talking about that? It's whole evening, whole day? Oh gosh, we get the point. The PNM lost, we get licks. You all don't need to keep rehashing that. And as I had to tell the MP for Shagona Seas, well, in 2013, when you all got 12-0, right? Where were your mouths then? You all had nothing to say then. No, they hush. But now, Blue Hush and Blue Wave and Blue this and Blue that. Okay, Tobago spoke. And they chose the TPP. We have moved past that. Okay? But I was making the point that when I looked at the numbers, well, the preliminary numbers, I have not had occasion yet to look at the individual figures in terms of what each candidate got to look at the margin of victory on the part of the TPP over their nearest rivals, the PNM, because I recall in 2021, at least for a couple of the seats, the margin of victory was very slim. So I think, if memory serves me correctly, Kelvin Morris, former former minority leader would have won by just a few votes. I don't know if it's 4 or 5 votes or something like that. Tracy Davidson Celestin would have lost by a small amount. I recall Ansel Dennis would have lost by less than 10 votes. So the margins were small. So I haven't had occasion yet to look to see what that margin is, but I imagine it would be similar, if only because the preliminary figures show that the TPP would have gotten less votes this time around than the PDP got in 2021 by about just a little under 700 votes. In 2021, the PDP got 16,900 and I think 32 votes or something like that. And this time around, the TPP got about 16,200 and change. So in fact, their numbers went down. So it speaks volumes, and it says that after 4 years in office, the governance of Farley Augustine and his team failed really to move the needle, at least in terms of an upward trajectory. Just about 700 votes less. So their base held firm. The base from 2021 held firm. So it is clear that it is the PNM's base that did not hold firm. Now, we could make 2 assumptions from that. Either that the TPP was not able to convince PNM people to swing, or perhaps they may have been able to convince some PNM people to swing to replace any fallout from persons who would have voted for the PDP and not the TPP. Because I'm sure there were some people who supported the PDP because of Watson Duke and who don't like Farley and who decided not to cast their ballots. There were some persons who would have been disenchanted, who might have voted for the PDP and fell by the wayside, and whatever bit that they may have been able to pick up from the few PNM supporters to make up for that. But nevertheless, as I said, from 16,932 down to 16,200, that should be a cause for concern for the TPP, especially going into your second term, where you no longer have the benefit or the advantage to say, well, the last administration did this and our predecessors did that. You are now the last administration. You are now your predecessors. So you can't come from 2026 to 2030 to explain incompetence or lack of performance and blame it on the PNM, right? Because you served for the last 4 years, and the last 4 years will now feed into the next 4 years. So you no longer have that advantage. So while people would have bought into that narrative from 21 to 25, that the PNM did this and the PNM left these debts and the PNM did and the PNM did, and that is why you were not able to do certain things, now you don't have that advantage. So let's see how they navigate that that particular nuance as they proceed in the next 4 years. I would say congratulations to them. A win is a win. All right. They fought hard. They fought nasty. And I say nasty in terms of the rhetoric on the campaign trail, that while the PNM again tried to keep it clean and respectful, you had on the blue platform the leader of that party talking nonsense about the former prime minister being breadfruit or roast breadfruit and all this kind of stupid talk, insulting the intelligence level of one of the PNM's candidates, talking about he doesn't have the intelligence level or the intelligence quotient to serve as a secretary. All right. But again, my preliminary assessment of what took place on Monday is that just as we saw on April 28th, PNM supporters did not show up. Now, I don't know if it is that people still feel disaffected. People are still upset with the PNM. I don't know. And if that reflected in the numbers, because when I looked at the general election numbers, however, the TPP got more votes in the THA election than they did in the general election, because they got just over 13,500 votes or so in the general election, but they were able to get 16,200 and change in the THA election, which is somewhat of an anomaly, because people generally tend to come out for general elections more so than they do for, what is akin to local government elections. The PNM, with respect to Monday, saw a decrease of about 1,500 votes from their their numbers from 2021. And in the general election, they got exactly 11,000 votes. And they would have seen a small reduction of just about a couple hundred votes in their figures on Monday as compared to what they got in the general election. So basically, again, neither of the two parties were able to move the needle. And which means that when we look at, is about 50% of the electorate came out of an electorate of some 52,000 persons. You still had about 26,000 people who were eligible to vote and who chose not to. And given the fact that, again, the PNM would have been able to wrest a couple of seats, a couple of districts, but just a few hundred votes, I am sure a few hundred votes in the right districts would have made the difference. And I'm sure that when the individual figures come out and we look at the margin of victory in some of the districts, we will see that it might have been a difference of maybe a couple hundred votes. And I am certain that there were PNM supporters in those districts who could have come out and cast their ballot and made the difference. Even if we didn't win, 2 or 3 districts would have been better, right? Inclusive of the one that we had, Kelvon, because I think Kelvon did a remarkable job as the lone defender in the last 4 years. And if anybody deserved another 4 years, I think it was Kelvon, because I kept asking over the last 4 years, why aren't we seeing certain faces? I know there are some faces that people did not want to see, and it was good that they may have chosen to stay away, but there are certain faces that we should have seen. And for too much of that 4 years, it was just basically Kelvon doing the majority of the heavy lifting. I think you don't wait until a general election to have meetings. And I think that has always been the PNM's problem, right? I complained bitterly about that in the lead up to the general election. A couple of years before the general election, you all who listen to me religiously would have heard me say that I found that the PNM was not having enough public meetings, the purpose for which was to enlighten the population as to what the government was doing. And that contributed significantly to our loss, because the population did not see or were not seized of what the PNM, the last administration, did. And therefore, if they don't see it and if they don't know it, it did not happen. It does not exist. And that is why up till today, you still have UNC supporters making the claim that the UNC built the Arima Hospital and the UNC built the Grandi Hospital and the UNC built the Point Fortin Hospital, when nothing could be further from the truth. And we know that. I have treated with that issue on numerous occasions outside and even inside the parliament. And I think I would have treated with it sufficiently in the parliament, as I love to do, work with my receipts. I don't just come and make empty and vacuous statements. I will read articles, as I attempted to do on Friday. For those of you who looked at the Parliament channel, and you would have seen the challenge that I had, where members opposite kept jumping up on standing orders, claiming tedious repetition, and other speakers from the opposition bench already talked about that and so on. Even though I was taking a different angle, I was not afforded the opportunity to develop the point that I was making, right? Because the Madam Deputy Speaker, as I imagine, she probably has no choice but to do, because at the end of the day, she is UNC, would have sided with the government and sided with those who kept challenging me with standing orders. And after 4 warnings, advised me to take my seat and bring an end to my contribution, when I had a number of other points that I wanted to raise, some of which I will discuss today. But that is the challenge that we face every time we have a sitting of the Parliament. And I can tell you, I mean, I have said before, some people look at being a parliamentarian and think it's something glamorous. But when you sit in that chamber and you have to deal with my colleagues on the other side, it could be, sometimes there have been days when I just felt like picking up my brief and walking out. The constant crosstalk is sickening. It is disgusting. And some of the comments that they make, it is truly upsetting. And it's like they forget that we are there to do the people's business. This is not 41 of us coming there to spar and argue and fight out because of, whatever personal differences we may have. And given the fact that you have 4 new members of parliament on the opposition bench and several new members of parliament on the government side, that type of animosity ought not to exist. because we are all of us who are new. We should not be engaging in any sort of antagonistic exchanges because of what existed before. But it seems like the new ones on that side have come in there. I don't know if it is that they were tutored as to how they're supposed to behave. Many of them remain quiet, but still, when time for the nastiness, they show their colors. And I've said before, this government has a 10-year axe to grind, and boy, oh boy, are they grinding that axe. I can tell you my colleagues who sit to my direct right, the freshman bench, sometimes in quiet discourse, we share the views. They're sickening. Really, let us do the people's business. And I am saying, notwithstanding the standing orders and what the standing orders say, if we are there and you're genuinely interested in debating whatever the bill is and providing the population with the information that they need to be able to make an informed assessment, then we can relax the standing orders at times. So if it is that there are certain points, I am bringing up the rear, so to speak, in terms of the persons who would have spoken from our side on that particular bill, that is, as it pertains to the road traffic fines and so on, and the amendments to allow for to give citizens time to pay for certain offenses. If the population is listening, and we need to understand, the population is not going to know, and I made the point on Friday, the average citizen isn't going to say, let me grab a cold beer and a piece of cake and take up this legislation and take a read. They're not going to do that. And so they look at the Parliament channel for the specific purpose to hear the points being raised by the various speakers on both sides and to be able to form an opinion. And I was heartened to see, while I was going through Facebook this morning, several UNC Facebook activists who normally cuss in the PNM and have the worst to say about the PNM are saying they never thought they would say this, but they agreed with the points that were raised by members of the opposition. Some of them highlighting points that were raised by Carl Membert, who a lot of them have issues with, right? And they were saying, the opposition made a good point about this, the opposition made a good point about that, and the government this, and UNC activists, UNC influencers on social media actually challenging the party that they support. And as I've said before, while I used to call many of them fully dunce, some of them have redeemed themselves. But I am saying that if we really there about the people's business and we're not there about showmanship, then sometimes we could relax the standing orders and allow for certain things. And maybe on our side, we probably too decent. Because there are many times when we are debating bills and speakers on the government side would raise points that were raised by others on their side. And we don't jump up and standing order, Madam Speaker this, Mr. Speaker that, and tedious repetition and so on. We allow them to speak. Go ahead and say whatever it is that you have to say, even if 2 or 3 other speakers before you may have raised those issues. Go right ahead. When speaker after speaker on the government side want to talk the last administration and the last administration and the last administration and raising points that have nothing to do with the bill that is before us, but we allow them. We give them free rein. Do what is all you have to do. But we could be nasty too and jump up on standing orders every minute. 55-4, 55-1, and this, and 48-6. And we could do that too. But we are about debating for the benefit of the people. But courtesy, it appears, is something that those on the other side, those who sit to the right of the speaker, they don't know about. And as I said, they have an axe to grind and they come to grind it and they will do that. All right? And so, but I guess that's what politics is. It's a form of warfare. And they decide that they want to play nasty. So, but we will try to maintain decorum as far as we could. But I'm just saying, to deprive the people the opportunity to hear the points. And we know why they do it sometimes, because in my own case, they didn't like what I was saying, highlighting the hypocrisy of that government that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa would have stated on the campaign trail that the fines were too high and that they would reduce the fines and they would introduce some form of education program designed to let people know what the law is and so on and get them to comply, use moral suasion rather than the heavy hand of the law to force people to comply. And as I said on Friday, those are two promises that were made. Neither one has been kept. Neither one has been delivered. And at least one of those promises, the promise to reduce fines, will not be kept and will not be delivered because the Prime Minister has made it pellucid that she will not be reducing any of the fines. And further to that, she intends to be brutal and swift with the brutal retribution that she promised on the campaign trail. So for those of you who are buying into this foolishness from Anil Robertson, that, well, if in 6 months we see a change and if in 6 months you all behave yourselves and we see compliance on the roads, then the Prime Minister will reconsider the fines and so on. Rubbish. They need revenue, and that is precisely what this is about, revenue. So I don't buy into when Saddam Hussein gets up to speak and telling me, this is about saving lives, it's not about revenue generation, it's about saving lives. Okay, so the increase in the fine and the fees for passports by 100%, that is designed to save lives too, Saddam? The increase in the customs duties, is that also designed to save lives, Saddam? The increase in the fees for maxi taxi drivers for who use the bus route by 100%, is that also intended to save lives? Just asking that question. The refusal of the government to remove the wicked and oppressive 7% online tax that they yapped about for years when they were in opposition, to tell you that the former administration was wicked and they just want to pick your pockets, and the leprechaun, who was the finance minister, called Mimbert, greedy and only want to tax and cut. Here we are, well into the 9th month of their reign, and the 7% online tax is still there and quite likely will go nowhere. All right? Don't be surprised if they increase it in the dead of night. Put nothing past this government. Since the same government that complained bitterly about how the last administration watered down the procurement legislation as compared to what they would have brought in 2013 thereabouts, and that they would have made exemptions for certain goods and services. Well into the 9th month of their reign, they bring legislation for all kind of things, all kind of foolishness, take away your junk pension, among other things. And yet still, nothing, no amendments to fix the watered down procurement legislation, so that for the last 8.5 going on to 9 months, they have been spending billions on procurement under the same watered down legislation that they say will allow you to thief. All the services that the previous administration would have made exempt, that they complained bitterly about, they have been spending hundreds of millions and billions of dollars on those same services, procuring those same services for the last 8.5 to 9 months using the same watered down legislation. And the Prime Minister came on Friday and she laid out the legislative agenda, right? And she said, it's so much on that you will present it in writing to us. I heard no mention made of any intention to make any amendments or adjustments to the procurement legislation to fix the mischief that they accused the last administration of engaging in. And it speaks again to the hypocrisy, but their supporters, the hypocritical supporters, very quiet on that. And when the opportunity presents itself, I will raise it in the parliament. Right? I intend to do so, to highlight for them in their face the hypocrisy. And I know they listen, because during the parliament while I was speaking on Friday, many of them were talking about, yeah, we know you on Facebook and all of that. Good. Continue to listen. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Okay? Do that. Because if I can't talk to you all in the parliament, well, you can listen to me here, because this is my parliament. Just making that point. All right? But coming back to wrap up on the issue of Tobago. When I looked at the numbers, as I said, neither of the two parties really were able to convince the disaffected to come out and vote. And as I said, on the PNM side, I think part of that stems from the fact that there was not confidence that we would have won. And I believe, this is my opinion, that a lot of people, PNM supporters, didn't come out because of that. But studying the numbers, I am seeing where if we were able to convince these people that we could win, it would have made a difference. Even if we didn't win a majority of seats, we could have come away with a few more than we would have gone in with. So again, just like April 28th, PNM supporters didn't come. It wasn't because there was any significant increase in support for the TPP. It is just because our supporters did not come out. And we know they are there, silent, but they just did not show up when it mattered. And the thing is, the one thing the PNM has always been credited for, and to which the success that we've enjoyed at the polls over the years has been credited, as our election day machinery and our ability to bring our supporters out and get them to the polls, right? Our election day machinery has always been considered to be second to none. And that is why it's important to have your party groups and your street captains and all of these things. But I guess that apparatus didn't work well on Monday. All right? Because for us to see a reduction of some 1,500 votes or so from the last time speaks volumes from where I sit. But we continue to, we understand and we appreciate that we have supporters in Tobago. The PNM still is the only national party, the only true national party, the only party that contests every seat, every district, and every election. And notwithstanding what our prospects may look like, we will continue to offer ourselves to the people of Tobago. And as one MP told me on Friday, while we were in the elevator coming from the members' lounge, elections, one government MP that is, elections are a cycle. And today you're up and tomorrow you're down. And they say, yes, we in power now, but we know the day will come when the tide will turn and we all will be back in office. But for the time being, while we are here, we will continue to do what we do and what we have to do, right? Until the population decides that they're tired of us. Okay? And that's just as what happened last year. The population decided that they were, to some extent, they were tired of the PNM, but more so, we lost because we didn't do what we were supposed to do from the perspective that we did not inform the population. And I will admit, and we have said it, several of our speakers have said it on the campaign, well, at meetings, and the leader has said it as well, that perhaps in government, the PNM didn't do as well as they should have in terms of listening to the cries of the people, right? Maybe we took our supporters for granted, and we are now paying the price for it. But a lot of people took chin up with propaganda and chop it talk from the UNC, and just 8 months later, they are regretting it. In fact, the amount of UNC activists who contributed to spreading the propaganda that I am now seeing on social media saying, I will back my vote, I regret my vote, EBC, I want back my vote. And I kept telling you, your vote is non-refundable. That when they disappoint you, you cannot go back to the EBC and say, I make a mistake, I want a refund. It doesn't work that way. You have to wait for the full 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days, which I imagine they will take. Notwithstanding, I keep hearing people saying, well, you know, honor before. I honestly not seeing before. Unless something totally unexpected happens, I am not seeing that. Why? Because as I mentioned to you all before, notwithstanding the claims that they're about country and they're about fixing this and fixing that, at the end of the day, it's about paisa, mula. And because some of them would have lost out on the opportunity for pension, as I understand it, over the last 2 terms, because the elections were called early, they're going right down to the wire, right? And they want to earn pension based on their highest earnings as government ministers. And all the perks of office, and you walk into a room and everybody have to stand up and all this kind of nonsense. And that's why I call it nonsense, right? Because when I go somewhere and I'm invited to something and I'm announced and people want to get out, I say, I'm not about that. I will walk into a room, quiet, sit down in the back. I was invited to something recently and I went in and I sat down in the back. And the ushers, when they were informed that I was there, came and they said, Mr. Romain, what you doing sitting in the back? I said, listen, I comfortable here now. If you all need me to make a speech or bring remarks, no problem. I will come up then. But I am quite comfortable being in the back. So all this other thing about, they like that big show and head minister and MP, I know about that. Never have been and never will be. That's how some of them end up losing the ability to stay grounded. Because you figure because you have title, that means that all of a sudden Yes, you want to be worshipped and venerated. I'm not in that shippiness. And a lot of people have said to me, our experience with ministers have been they don't really talk to you, they see you outside and saying, but I find you real cool, and I intend to stay that way. Okay, because as I said, I know this is not forever. This is temporary, and I don't want whenever I leave office, you bounce up people, and all of a sudden you realize that you're normal again, and people say, oh, you see, talking to people now, but when he needs to talk to nobody. Nobody will ever be able to say that about me. All right. Let me say good day to Mr. Charles, who I met yesterday in PriceMart. A very spirited conversation, and very informative. He's one of my loyal listeners, and yes. So, let me see. PNM persons who rejected as candidates voted for the PNM. Someone is saying PNM is too nice. I could agree with that sometimes, but we have built a reputation of being the party that is held to a higher standard, and it's difficult to depart from that for some people. So I take in, for instance, on Friday, when engaging in debate as we should, that incident where the Prime Minister saw it fit and appropriate to refer to former Minister of Energy, Stuart Young, as small pin in the Parliament. All right? And I don't know if it is that these persons, these senior politicians, senior in terms of age and senior in terms of tenure, have no regard for the listening public and understand that there are some people who actually look at the Parliament channel in their homes, and there may be children present. But even forget the children, right? There's a certain level of decorum and decency with which we must engage in the Parliament. Things were said before, all right? Stuart apologized for something that he said, but he wasn't the first hot mic. But for the Prime Minister when a simple question that was asked of her by the leader of the opposition, decided to take it down the road of nastiness. As they say, as Jolene John once said, when they go low, we go below the pavement. And what we had was below the pavement behavior, guttural behavior from the Prime Minister. And she set the tone such that one of her ministers, Wayne Sturge, was some refer to him as Wayne Purge, when he was making his contribution, he too felt it necessary to refer to Stuart as small pin. And they thought that was appropriate. So when people heap scorn on us in Parliament, and they say, oh, it's only a set of jokers and a waste of time, and they only kicks in Parliament. How many years ago Explainer sang that song, and it is still very relevant today. Decades later, it is still very relevant, given the fact that the majority of people who were sitting in the Parliament when Explainer sang that song are no longer there. You have an almost entirely new crop of politicians. And the same criticism is being made, that is a bunch of jokers in Parliament. We're not serious. They're kicks in. And nothing has changed decades later. And why is that? And for those of us who are trying to make a paradigm shift, it is very difficult when even the new ones on the other side who have come in decide that they want to carry on the nastiness and the deplorable type of politics that they're engaging in. Right? But then all 41 of us are tarnished as being a bunch of jokers and waste of time in Parliament. So, let's see if I get this here. Or is it? So, play this. Give me 1 second. Let me just play this for those of you who might not have heard it. And you see, and again, while they on that side accuse the media of being pro PNM, I didn't see the media making heavy weather of this, but when Stuart made his statement, oh God, Stuart Young must resign, and Stuart Young this, and Stuart Young that, and editorials, and all these men and women have letters, sending letters to the editor and all of that. But the Prime Minister said it. Where are they? Where are those persons who fancy themselves to be the conscience of the nation? Where are you all? To call out the Prime Minister on her foolishness. And that is why she feels emboldened to say it, because when she does it, all of you all who just waiting in the wings for the opportunity to come and bend the knee so that you could get some sort of appointment or something, you stay quiet and say nothing. And then you have the hypocrites who support that party. Well, thing, yes, that is karma. I remember when Stuart Young says Zami and all kind of thing, and right, so he gets it back, it's good. But you hypocrites had a problem when Stuart said what he said. And rightly so. Right? I know he must resign and all of that. But now your leader has gone on in the gutter. And instead of condemning it and saying 2 wrongs don't make a right. Okay, Stuart Young said what he said or whatever, but it was not appropriate for the Prime Minister to say such a thing. Instead, you hypocrites come out in your numbers on social media and talk about, yeah, good, and you look for that, and yes, get him, and that is my leader. We know. It just speaks to the guttural mindset that pervades that party. And who vexes all your business. It doesn't prevent me, even if you're UNC and you're in my constituency, please feel free to still come and see me if you have an issue. Because when you come to my office, I don't ask you for a party card and I don't ask you who you voted for. Okay? Right. I help everybody because that is why I was elected. Let me see. Right. Let me just get this here. Right.
A copy of the advice as well as the name of the attorney that gave that advice. Thank you.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the question. We were dealing with the legislative agenda. Today, sharing a view. And if you want legal advice, ask your small pen lawyer you have person.
Madam Speaker, Prime Minister, oh gosh. You should withdraw that statement.
They could come to you.
Yes, so let us move on.
Yeah, so let us move on. No calls for the Prime Minister to apologize. No call for her to withdraw that statement. No. Let us move on. It's okay, it is said. But if it was said by someone on our side, I am certain the man who is sitting to the Prime Minister's immediate left, the leader of government business, would have gotten up and standing order and would have made demands for an apology and a retraction and a withdrawal of that statement. And he would have gotten a chorus down the bench, down the line. Oh yes, and the speaker, whoever sitting in the speaker's chair would have insisted for withdrawal. But on Friday, let us move on. Okay, well, you're listening. That's good. I will call out your hypocrisy. Because that's exactly what it is. Hypocrisy. So we had the bill that was before us with respect to the proposal by the government to implement something called a warning system. Now, as I understand it, police officers, licensing officers, traffic wardens do have a discretion when they pull you over, right? They could choose to give you a fixed penalty notice, or they could give you a warning, tell you, well, next time, whatever it is. They don't have to give you, as it is right now, even before this bill was brought. That discretion has existed for a while. But the government sought to codify that discretion. So they came at this and they said, well, because they realized the backlash they get in, the cost that they get in from even their own supporters with respect to these increased fines for traffic violations, among other things. But these traffic violations, increased fines, really, really turn some of their supporters against them to the point where many of them are publicly stating they will never vote for the UNC again. The UNC could never get their support. Some of them saying that's it, they're done there, they're done with voting. We voted no. And of course, the members of the government, their supporters, and others, trying to frame it as we are lawbreakers and we support lawbreaking, and and I'm seeing comments being posted on Facebook under posts related to that. Why is the PNM always seeking to protect the lawbreakers and not the law-abiding citizens? Utter rubbish. Utter rubbish. Is because we are looking out for the well-being of the citizenry. That's why we voted no. Because for us to support that piece of legislation would be for us to sanction the increase in fines, which we have spoken out against and will continue to speak out against. So we suggested, even though in our contributions, one of the suggestions that came up was that you could extend the time period from 3 to 7 days to maybe between 14 to 30 days, as exists in other jurisdictions. Because we are mindful of the fact that while the supporters of the UNC will bend over backwards now to defend the indefensible, the very things that they spoke out against vociferously between 2015 to 2025, that today all of a sudden the scales have been removed from their eyes, and as I've said before, what they consider to be oppression for 10 years is now tough leadership and good governance. The hypocrites that they are, right? And we are saying we could not support that, because increasing the fines, while to some extent might bring compliance, in large measure it would not, because people will still take chances. And we are saying that the fine for something as simple as a blown light bulb, a cracked windshield, to increase that by 100-fold, and then say, well, all right, but we will give you 3 days to 7 days to fix it. First of all, we know why you all came about with that. And it had nothing to do with the Prime Minister is such a loving, caring Prime Minister, and she heard the cries of the people, as the Minister claimed, and that is why they came with this. No, yeah, what cries did you all hear? The main cries of the people is the fines are too high. The main cries of the people is you all promised to reduce the fines, and instead you increased it. That is what the cries of the people have been. And so for you to come with this pathetic piece of legislation to say, well, we will be benevolent and we will allow you 3 to 7 days. So instead of you getting the ticket immediately, we will give you 3 to 7 days to fix the issue. And if you don't fix it within 3 to 7 days, then you will have to pay the fine, the increased fine. And all this is about saving lives. Saving lives, my foot. Utter rubbish. All right? Garbage. It is about revenue collection. So miss us with that BS for me, please. Let's turn this off here. Right. So we made the point, and we understand that for some people, it's not just a matter, while the actual offense itself, or while the actual issue, maintenance issue, might seem simple, for some people, it's a matter of dollars and cents. And other things. Not everybody knows how to change a light bulb. Just in the same way, not everybody knows how to change a tire. So not everybody who gets a flat tire on the highway will pull aside and come out in the hot sun and take out tire iron and all them kind of thing, and take out jack and change the tires. Not everybody will do that. And there are some things that require changing that 3 days may not be enough. 7 days may not even be enough. And I would have told you all about my situation when I had the cracked windshield, and the insurance company sent me to a particular company that they deal with. And they told me this company has all the documents, so you just go there, you'll fill out everything, they will submit the claim, you just sign the form and whatever else. When I called the company, they gave me the option, do I want the original windshield or the generic one, to call it that. When I inquired as to what is the cost of the original windshield, I realized that it was within my coverage limit. I said, I want the original windshield. Who wouldn't want the original? They did not have it in stock at the time, and they told me, but they have it coming in within a week, could sort out. I say, well, okay, no problem. If it is I'm pulled over, I will just let the officer know that is the situation, which I did when I was pulled over, but he didn't care, and the traffic warden still gave me a ticket for it, okay? And I got my windshield changed. I paid the fine, and it is what it is. I didn't bother to contest, and I'm saying that these things happen. Some people with these more modern vehicles, it's not just simply a case, well, okay, your light bulb blown and you could just change it, or you get somebody to come and change it. A lot of these things have sensors, right? Like in the vehicle that I drive, to change the brake pads. It's not just simply, well, okay, my brake pads squeaking or whatever it is, I need to change it, and I just go and get somebody to change it. It doesn't work that there are additional parts, because my brake pads have a sensor so that when they go bad, it shows up on my dashboard. A message comes up telling me I need to change my my brake pads and so on. And there's a special attachment. So it's not just the brake pads alone. So when I have to change, I have to buy the brake pads and this sensor cord or whatever it is that they have to put on so that the vehicle would be able to detect when the parts need to be changed. So while they make it seem as if it's something that's simple, even with your lights, with my vehicle, the same thing. Any issue that the vehicle has, it tells me, it comes up on the dashboard and it will tell me, well, okay, this is the issue or whatever as the case may be. And all of these things are attached to sensors. So it's not as simple, and to purchase these things are expensive. I can tell you it is expensive. So it is not as simple as they make it out to be. And some people people are struggling. And while messing, yeah, that might just cost you this or just cost you that. Not everybody has the money within 3 days. Some of these people have found themselves in the situation that they're in because thanks to the government taking away their jobs, they don't have the money to pay for some things. And I spoke to you last week about the gentleman who went to do his inspection and a couple issues came up and therefore he was not able to pass the inspection. But things like an oil leak, 2 of his tires needed to be changed. It is not that, and from what I understand, it's not that the tires were that bad that they couldn't hold on for maybe a couple more weeks. But when you go to the inspection station, they're doing everything, inspecting everything, and they create a list and so on. Sometimes you might just go to the mechanic to do your basic service. You want to change your oil, change your air filter and so on. And the mechanic give you a whole grocery list of things that they tell you needs to fix. At the end of the day, these guys looking for money, and they're looking for every little thing. And even though it is not that dire, but they tell you, you need to do this and you need to do that. You have to change your engine mount, both engine mounts, and do this and change that. If you don't have the money for it, what are you supposed to do? And we were saying 3 to 7 days is not enough. But the government has managed to successfully gaslight their supporters into believing that there's a bunch of lawbreakers. Yes, we are lawless dump. And if it is that you know you can't afford to maintain your car, then just pack it up because it's that easy for you all. Because perhaps you all didn't lose your jobs and you have sufficient savings put aside so that when something goes bad with your vehicle, or maybe you have a second vehicle that you could use in the interim. All right? But not everybody has that facility. Those persons who had jobs and for whom using their vehicle for a little side hustle to get a little extra money to support their families, and now that vehicle has now become their sole source of income, they may not have that facility available to them. And the people are concerned. So, and as I made the point on Friday, we are not against increasing the fines for certain offenses. Person driving without insurance, as I said, throw the book at them. I support the increased fine for that. Persons who driving under the influence of alcohol or other drugs, of course, throw the book at them. No problem with that. Right? Because that is highly irresponsible, and you're putting not just the lives of others on the road, but persons who may be traveling with you as well, and who may not be able to drive to say, well, all right, you're a little intoxicated, let me drive. Maybe they're that person who, your other passengers, none of them have their license, they have no driving experience whatsoever, so you're putting their lives at risk. So I said, throw the book at them too. But for the other offenses, the minor offenses, come on, ease people up with that. Your driver's license expire a day or two. You're 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers over the speed limit. And I'm not just talking about the 100 kilometer speed limit. As I raised on Friday, you have in the non-built up areas where the speed limit is a little less. All of a sudden now I see they're publishing the speed limits in certain areas. But when you're driving on a road where the speed limit is 35 kilometers per hour, as I mentioned on Tumpuna Road, and after I mentioned that in the Parliament, during my contribution to the debate, when we went to the break, one of the government MPs came and said, Kush, boy, I use that road all the time and I never know it's 35 kilometers. But I could get a ticket easy. I never know that. Because this individual, they have a close family member who lives in my constituency, and so they're there frequently. I say, well, I always driving up on that road. I never know it's 35 kilometers. How many people know that? Not even people in the constituency are aware of that. So persons who come from the outside and using the road and not seeing any traffic signs, probably you have one sign on the road that's stating that. And they're thinking, well, yeah, I'm within the speed limit. I think it's 50. You driving at 45 or 50 and get caught in a speed trap and it's 35, and just because instead of 35 you're at 40, $2,000 or $4,000 or whatever is the fine for that. Ridiculous. So we could not support that legislation, because basically what we would have been doing by proxy is supporting the increase in fines for some of these things which we are against, and we voted no. And they could try to twist it, turn it, bend it how you want, right? It had nothing to do with us supporting lawbreakers, because we had the demerit point system in place. And the benefit that the demerit point system, contrary to what members of the government are saying, that it didn't work and it was a waste of time and it was punitive and so on, was that if you are a repeat offender and because you have money, you could afford to pay the fines, or as some people choose to do, when they decide that they're not paying the fine and they're going to contest the ticket, and they give you a date to contest the ticket in 2030 and 2031 and 2032, and we are in 2026. You say, well, 6 years time. So if it is that when I decide to contest the ticket 6 years from now, two things can happen. One, the police officer doesn't show up, as is the norm, and it's going to keep putting off and putting off and putting off until the magistrate or the whoever is the judicial officer get fed up and throw out the matter, and I got to go. Or if they tell me I have to pay the fine, well, in 6 years' time, my circumstance will change and I'll probably have the money then and I will pay it. Simple as that. So when you decide to be a repeat offender, and that is your mindset, what the demerit point system would have done is, so, well, okay, well, while you're waiting for 2030, 2031, and 2032 for your day in court to come, you will do so without authorization to operate on the nation's roads. Okay? Because you choose to be a serial offender. You are beyond reformation. So you know what? Fine. Let's play that game. Wait till 2031 and 32 to contest the ticket. But because you have X amount of demerit points and show that you want to defy the law, no problem. We will take away your license in the meantime. Let's see how that works. So there are some people already saying, what the hell with that? Let them give me tickets. And they're proud to come on social media and show you, look at how much tickets I have and I ain't paying none. And they're boasting. How have you fixed this situation? You have not, because they still have their license and they still have authorization to drive on the road. And all they have is a pile of tickets there. And in 6 years' time, they can't even find it because they clean out the car, they sell the car, all kind of thing could happen in that period of time. Right? They forget, they ain't get no summons or whatever it is, and they forget about that. But the demerit point system had that additional element would ensure that that some of you all should not be on the nation's roads. And since fines will not work for you, no problem. We will take away your authorization, suspend your license. So when you get pulled over, you will answer to the law then. All right? They didn't understand that. So when the MP for Tobago East, who spoke before me, talking rubbish, but the only people that the fines would apply to and the only people who should be concerned about the fines are the lawbreakers. The same principle applied for the demerit point system. The lawbreakers are the ones who got demerit points. If you were a law-abiding citizen and you are abiding by the laws as they pertain to road traffic, then you had nothing to worry about with demerit points. Same principle, but like somehow didn't grasp that concept. He and the rest of them on that side didn't grasp that concept. So if that is your argument, that the only people who have to be concerned about the fines and the heavy fines are the lawbreakers, well, the only people who have to be concerned about the demerit points and getting demerit points were the lawbreakers. Same people you talking about, the same ones PNM was talking about. We just took a different approach to ensure that those who want to be serial offenders, we take it a step further and get them off the roads. But that is their defense for jacking up the fines. So a man can't afford to buy new tires, but you figure he could pay a fine of $4,000 or $6,000 or $10,000, right? Can't afford insurance and he shouldn't be on the road. But you figure that this hefty fine, you'll be able to. Okay. Windshield. Some people, as we know, have third-party insurance. A lot of citizens in this country have third-party insurance. All right? Because they can't afford fully comprehensive. And when they don't have, some of them opt out of the basic coverage for windshield because they're looking for the lowest premium. I can tell you, what's the lowest package all they have? They want to take it basic, as cheap as possible. All they want is a certificate, a legitimate certificate in some cases, to be able to present to the police or the licensing officer or the traffic warden if they get stopped to show I have insurance. But what that insurance covers, and nothing is the same. And some of them have now taken to going to these cut-rate companies, right? Those companies whose reputation for not paying is all over the place. That's who they're running to now. And far from increasing the fines and expecting that you're going to see more persons who are driving without insurance complying with the law, instead, what you're going to see is a proliferation and an increase in fraudulent insurance certificates on the road. You don't have the money, even for the most basic third-party plan, and they will hear partner tell you, I could link you with an agent, Yeah, just pay a 500 and you get through, or you pay a 300 and you get a certificate. And some of the people who are generating these fraudulent certificates, unfortunately, are bona fide insurance agents and agencies, agent for this company. So they have their own agencies and decide they don't work directly for the company, but they establish an agency and they have a contract with whichever insurance company to be able to issue these certificates. And issuing, some of them issuing bogus certificates, right? And the people who have it, they don't care. Well, I don't want no 1,200 or 1,100 to pay for no insurance, but man, I could get for 400 a bogus certificate. They don't care. And what we've seen happening recently, we've seen at least 2 instances of persons who have made videos who said that they were pulled over by the police, received a fixed notice, a fixed penalty notice, a ticket for invalid insurance, expired insurance, but then the people come and they do videos showing you the certificate. Look, this is the date, and my insurance expires in July of 2026. We in January, or it expires in June of 2026 and we in January, which suggests that these officers are not even doing proper due diligence in terms of the scrutiny of the documents. Because if they did, they would have noticed that the insurance was valid. Assuming, of course, that these videos are legit, and there's no reason to think that they're not, because the person's actually showing you the certificates that show that the insurance is valid. So what are these officers doing when you get this? So it means that if you're not even scrutinizing these documents properly to be able to see that the person has valid insurance, then it would be very easy if these people have fraudulent certificates to pull one over on the officers. Because clearly you all are not taking the time to look at it to be able to determine whether it's something off it. Because if you're making mistakes with legitimate certificates, then far more for the fraudulent ones, all you see is a stamp, right? An ink stamp, so it's not a photocopy, and you tell yourself it's legit. Go your way. And when people realize that, it just takes 1 or 2, and then they spread the word for the partners who they know also not driving with insurance, and you just pay a small money and you get something fraudulent. So it doesn't benefit the person whose property is damaged when they run into your wall and you're expecting the insurance company to pay for your wall to be fixed. And only then it is discovered the certificate was fraudulent. They run into your car and only then, and because they know the certificate is fraudulent, they're not even stopping to exchange information. First opportunity they get, if they could, they bust out. So I recall back in 2013 when I had just bought my new Kia Sportage, and driving down the highway in the vicinity of the Twin City lights, and a man runs into the back of my car. Oh, I didn't feel it. I in traffic. It wasn't that, the impact wasn't that significant. But I felt the rock, but I thought maybe it's just mind playing tricks. Until I looked into my rearview mirror and I saw this man behind me looking to bid a hasty retreat, and his whole bonnet bent up so. I said, well, what? Don't tell me this man hit me. So I looked, right? I saw him. So, all right, put on my indicator, I'm going to pull to the side. Only to see him, I'm fortunate, well, I wouldn't even say fortunately. I got his license plate number, right? And then I saw him filter to the side, going behind a big truck, and never stopped. I did what I was supposed to do to make my claim, but it was just a little scratch I got on my bumper. Small thing, but let me still go to the police station and make the report. Well, boy, from the time you reach in the police station, the officers start giving you all kind of excuse as to why, you're sure you really want to make this report and thing, because, with cases like these, it take a long time. It could be years for us to find the people. And I'm thinking, well, if I give you the license plate number, it should be very easy. You should just consult with licensing and you could get the information as it pertains to the owner and do something. But sometimes when you go licensing, it's not even the person who have the car now is not the owner because they didn't transfer. And it's like they're throwing the whole book of excuses at you for you to just say, well, look, this ain't making no sense, so let me don't even bother to make the report, because that is like they just don't want to have to do it. So just like the other day, when a couple of weeks ago, when the guy broadsided me on Arepita Avenue, and we went to one police station where we thought that is the station to go to. We told, well, no, where based on the street where the accident took place, that is St. James Police Station. Now we can take the report here, but if we take the report here, we still have to send it to St. James. And then the problem with that is then you don't know who is the officer to whom it is assigned to do the investigation, and then follow up is always ISU and one set of excuses. So after giving me this whole litany of woes as to why it would make more sense for us to go to St. James to make the report, we said, you know what, no problem. And we went to St. James to do the report. And then even when you get there, is any significant damage? Oh, no. So they don't want to settle outside, I think. Well, the other guy said, no, well, he want to go through the insurance, so okay, let's go. But this is what people are faced with. Oftentimes, you get into an accident and people prefer to settle outside rather than go through the insurance. So there's no need to go to the police station. So if they know that the documents bogus, obviously they're not going to. And then they give you some thing and right, and then you're calling them afterwards and they're not answering their phone and all kind of madness. But anyway, and you just get fed up and decide, you know what, let me just fix my car. I'll go to my insurance company, pay the excess, and I will just fix my car because I ain't going through this. So when you have this situation now, with these persons going to these fly-by-night companies that only taking money to provide us certificates and their fingers crossed and hope that no claims will be made, and when a claim is made, the end result is that you have to end up by the Office of the Financial Services Ombudsman to complain that it's hell for you to get your claim settled. Problems. So that's all we're going to see is a proliferation of that. So be that as it may. All right? But I just thought I would put that out there. So I think we had good reason not to support. We will not provide tacit support for what we see as being oppression and an oppressive system. Other ways to do it. Where is the promised education program that the Prime Minister said she would? Because when she was in opposition, that was the answer. That was the solution. The fines are too high and too draconian, and this wicked and evil and oppressive Keith Rowley administration. But our UNC government will reduce the fines and we will introduce a education program to bring the citizens into compliance using moral suasion. And then they come into office and all of a sudden she realizes we are a lawless dump. When we look at the statistics and the data that we did not have prior to the election, we realize that there was merit in what the PNM was doing. Never mind the fact that the statistics that they claim they weren't aware of was always there. You didn't even need to consult the police. As I read on Friday, for the benefit of the minister, and I don't know if it is like, if he was just listening to respond or if he was listening to me at all, I read an article in which I quoted the date of the article, the newspaper that the article came from, in 2024, June 6th of 2024, where the then Minister of Works and Transport was speaking at some function and he alluded to the statistics as it pertains to traffic violations. And he spoke about how many persons would have had their licenses suspended under the demerit point system. And he spoke about how many persons would have received demerit points. He referenced how many persons who had over 300 demerit points. All of these statistics were there. How many persons ran the red light by the red light camera by Hyatt, which, by the way, this administration has indicated they intend to activate. So those of you who approaching the light and you see it on amber and you feel, I could make it. And you ever pass there and you realize after you run the red light, you see a flash? Well, no, so they know. So they've been maintaining the records. And Mr. Sinanan spoke about that. Over 27,000 violations of people running the red light by Hyatt there. Whether it is you're heading west or you're heading east, right? And he spoke about that. So I read the article to highlight the statistics was there, the data was there. You all just were opposing for opposing sake, or you just weren't listening. And Mr. Sidenan would also have indicated since 2024 that the government was in the process of revamping and revising the demerit point system. So instead of persons' licenses being suspended, they would be sent to some sort of rehabilitation classes, all right? And then you just pay whatever your fines and you get back your license. Rather than suspending your license and all of that, let's take a different approach. And the minister, Zakur, just last week in his press conference, would have alluded to that, where he said that the last administration had no intention of suspending people's licenses. He said that. But then he wants to challenge me and say, and the article was not in June, the article was in April, before the election. And rubbish. Yes, Mr. Sidenan spoke recently, last year, when you all were with your fines and so on, but I specifically was referencing an article from 2024. But you want to come and challenge me with your nonsense. As I say, I always work with my receipts. I'm not playing that. And so the last administration would have heard the cries of the people, but they understood, yes, we could provide some level of compromise, and they were in the process of doing so. But the government, the entity, the party that presented itself as being the savior of the people, and we're going to ride in like white knights and save you all from this wicked and oppressive PNM, they have now come and doubled the oppression. And I am not amazed at all when I see their supporters now sanctioning oppression, defending oppression, bending over backwards to tell you why the oppression is needed. And the Prime Minister is cleaning up the country, and for too long we've been a lawless nation. But when the PNM tried to clean it up, they were wicked and they were oppressive and they only taken from the poor people, and they all a kind of rubbish talk. What a party of hypocrites. Anyway, and I'll keep calling you all out as that. Hypocrites. I turn now to another piece of legislation. Well, not legislation. Another happening in the Parliament on Friday, which I think would have caught many people, perhaps by surprise, and the announcement by the Attorney General that the government is going to discontinue civil proceedings in respect of the CLICO, the collapse of the CL Financial Group. As you know, there's civil proceedings where the state will seek to recoup funds from those persons who were found to be liable for the breach and liable for the collapse. And then there is the criminal investigation, where it is expected that once criminal negligence and wrongdoing is found by the police, that charges would be laid against who they need to be laid against, and that these persons would come before the court and judgment rendered, and if they have to make a jail, that they would make a jail. But the Attorney General made some pretty startling revelations in support of the decision to discontinue the civil side of things. And for me, it raised red flags and concerns. Because one of the things he said was it's 17 years now since the collapse of CL Financial, 2009. And here we are, up to now, nobody has been charged. How many years has the EMBD matter been ongoing? Nobody has been charged. That investigation, that police investigation, is still ongoing. The People's Partnership left office 11 years ago. 11 years, and these offenses are alleged to have occurred during their reign. So it's more than 11 years now, just that EMBD matter alone. And to date, nobody has been charged. What is the status of that investigation? Since the Attorney General is about cleaning up and holding the authorities to book with respect to sloppy investigations, he should have spoken to that issue as well and used the opportunity to provide the citizenry with some level of update or status update as to what is happening with the police investigation into that EMBD matter, where you have named a sitting government minister and several road paving contractors who have been adjudged by a judge of the High Court, the Supreme Court of Trinidad and Tobago, the Appellate Court, and the Privy Council have all said that these persons have a case to answer based on the evidence presented to them. Justice James Aboud said it in the High Court. Then you have the appellate judges upheld Justice Aboud's judgment, And then you had the Privy Council also upholding the judgment of Justice Aboud and the Appellate Court, all saying, based on the evidence before them, these men have a case to answer. And this is just on the civil side. But yet still, it is so evident to these eminent jurists that there is a case to answer. And more than 11 years later, the police cannot seem to find sufficient evidence to charge anybody. The court is saying, listen, just based on the submissions from the AMBD, if this case came before us from a criminal perspective, we're ready to lock up. All right? We're ready to send man to jail. Because what is before us is so evident. But the police, more than 11 years later, can't seem to come to the same conclusion to charge anybody. And to hear the Attorney General on Friday relate to us in the chamber and by extension the wider population about the sloppy way in which the investigation into this collapse of CLICO has taken place leaves one to wonder. Why, for instance, Prison Gate, since 2014, and you all have always heard me talk about that, since 2014, Prison Gate, where we had two prominent UNC attorneys stand accused of falsifying witness statements, copying and pasting witness statements to defraud the state of millions of dollars in compensation to prisoners who claim they were beaten by the police and beaten by prison officers and so on. And we had a master of the court presiding over one of these matters and realized that the testimony that is presented to her was similar to testimony that she would have read from other persons, word for word. Did her research and realized, listen, is cutting and pasting taking place here. The DPP, same DPP, today, Roger Gaspard, is on record, public record, as having said, just from a cursory glance at these documents, he is of the unflinching view that a criminal offense would have taken place. But yet still, 2014, we are now in 2026. 12 years later, police still investigating that. Since 2014, we heard the senior officer, then, I'm sure he retired now because I haven't heard his name mentioned in years, Senior Superintendent Dinoon, who told us, well, the investigation is almost at an end. And all that is left is to question the two attorneys. 12 years later, still, Ramdeen and Debbie Dean are yet to be questioned, I assume, because they have not been charged. We've heard nothing further about that. Since 2014, nothing about Prison Gate. Money pelt out. You, the taxpayer, had to foot millions of dollars being paid in claims and compensation to prisoners who were lying through their teeth. And the men who facilitated that, today, one of them is sitting as the chairman of a state enterprise. So that when they say Trinidad and Tobago is not a real place, understand there is merit in that. When the Prime Minister wants to talk about a lawless dump, she knows what she's talking about. And the contribution that she and her government have made to the continuance of this lawless dump. That is lawlessness. You put a man who, as an attorney and senior counsel, no less, you, more so than the average citizen, supposed to have the capacity to look at evidence, to read evidence and understand what are the prospects for your client. And so all that evidence that came out with respect to Vincent Nelson and his claims about kickbacks and so on and whatnot, the average citizen reading what was in the newspapers and realized, hey, yeah, but I couldn't care nothing about no indemnity and whatever they say, Paris thing and whatever. Based on what is presented here and the evidence that the state will be presenting to the court, it is clear a crime was committed. And the fact that these two men are no longer before the court on those matters for now, not because they were found not guilty by a jury of their peers, but on a technicality, because the main witness, the man who could sink them, would have given testimony on his deathbed, well, what he thought would have been his deathbed, having been diagnosed with cancer, and probably thought, well, he's going to meet his maker, and he wants to meet the maker with a clear conscience and hope that in the afterlife, that he had a hope of salvation. And having his cancer gone into remission and realize, well, he still has a few more years left on the earth, he decided to recant, because these few more years that have been granted, I'm not prepared to live as a pauper. All right? And my testimony with respect to what went on has cost him millions of dollars. He had to plead guilty, and which he did willingly. Nobody forced him to. And he was made to pay restitution to the tune of just over $2 million to the state. But it also affected his ability to practice his craft in the UK, where he operates, because having had a conviction against him, it impacted his license. So now he's having a bit of a challenge to earn an income and to maintain the lifestyle that he had before because of this. And then you come and say, well, I'm not testifying. Well, they had to pay me the money I have for me. And he says, no, we ain't going through that. And you decide, well, I'm going to take you all to court, file a civil suit. And unless and until there is an outcome in my favor with respect to the suit, I'm not going to testify against these two men. And the DPP say, well, here what? We don't know how long, knowing the justice system in this country, how long this matter is going to be dragged up. And it is unfair to these men to have them constantly appearing in court and all of that and going through that mental trauma while we are seeking to sort out this issue with this civil suit with this man. So let me drop the charges for now so these men can resume their normal life. And if the witness decides later on that he wishes to testify, then the charges could be relayed. See, the same way the charges were relayed against Mr. David Lee, same way. But the goodly Prime Minister, who is senior counsel, attorney at law for many, many years, and who figures she's one of the brightest lawyers, all right, saw it fit to put this man with a tarnished reputation to sit as the chairman of a state board. That's okay. Not surprised. But permit me to play for you what the Attorney General said, for those who would have missed it, and then we could discuss.
Honorable Attorney General.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this afternoon I have the unenviable task of laying the report on the Commission of Inquiry into the failure of CL Financial Limited, Colonial Life Insurance Company, Trinidad and Tobago Limited, Clico Investment Bank Limited, British American Insurance Company, Trinidad Limited, Caribbean Money Market Brokers Limited, and the Hindu Credit Union Cooperative Society Limited. The report has never been laid. I return to that shortly. Madam Speaker, I say that this is an unwelcome task because once again, I have been placed between a rock and a hard place. And I've been placed in that position by the truly unconscionable actions of my predecessors over the past decade or so. Now, what transpired over the past 10 years boggles the mind. I believe that it is important for me to refresh the memory of members present and that of the viewing public as to what has led us here today, given that the collapse of Clico took place 17 years ago under PNM administration in 2009. The government spent roughly, I was there when they fell.
That's why he knows everything.
2009. I know where the bodies are buried.
Yes,
He knows where the bodies are buried. This is the Attorney General saying he knows where the bodies are buried. If he is claiming that there is any wrongdoing, if that statement is not an admission of being complicit, I don't know what is. Now, in any other jurisdiction, you would have had other attorneys, men and women of letters, saying, well, what does the Attorney General mean by that? He knows where the bodies are buried. What bodies is he talking about? And yet the Prime Minister said, yes, there. You hear them? All right.
The government spent $28 billion. The government spent $28 billion rescuing the group. $28 billion.
Wow.
To date, however, and I was not there in 2010, just for the record. To date, however, somewhere in the vicinity of about $3 to $4 billion over and above that 28 billion have been spent on matters relating to the collapse of CLICO. Now, I say that that money has been spent, Madam Deputy Speaker, because the previous Attorney General, not me, and the Attorney Generals twice removed, not me, were irresponsible enough to have engaged lawyers and accountants over the decades and then to have stopped paying them in some cases since 2022, when I was at the University of the West Indies teaching my students.
So let me address some of what he just said there before I play further. Right? So he said $28 billion are spent, meaning to bail out CL Financial, and you're trying to blame the People's National Movement. Let us not forget that CL Group collapsed in 2009 and the PNM lost power in 2010. When everything was still fresh, all the evidence was there and all the bodies, I guess, weren't deceased yet, right? So let me read first to address that. He spoke about 28 billion. And who was responsible for that 28 billion? Guardian article dated the 15th of August 2012, titled Dukaran Comes Clean on CLICO Bailout. Former Minister of Finance Winston Dukaran has often shied away from controversy in his long political career. But in an explosive affidavit in response to a lawsuit against the government's handling of the CLICO affair, brought by his former cabinet colleague Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, Dukaran makes some astonishing revelations, including it may take a further 21 billion to resolve the CLICO issue. I repeat, it may take a further 21 billion to resolve the CLICO issue. This is Mr. Dukaran speaking in 2012, was it? 2012, yes. August of 2012, in his capacity as Minister of Finance. All right? So he is saying in 2012, 2 years after the PNM lost office, that it may take a further 21 billion to resolve the CLICO matter. Therefore, if in 2012 he is saying 21 billion more needs to be spent, you cannot blame the PNM for that. Because the PNM left office before this 21 billion was spent to bail out CLICO. So when the goodly Attorney General wants to come and make his presentation and figure everybody suffering from Alzheimer's, all right? No, sir. Not everybody. And if many of you all who sit on to the right of the speaker don't know how to use the laptop that the Parliament gave you, I know how to use mine. And I was using mine before the one that I got from the, well, not laptop, the iPad that we got from the Parliament. I had one before, and I know how to use it. He goes on to say why CLICO's assets could not have been sold in 2009 and 2010. So I'm just going to touch on those two things right here. It was Dukaran. So no 28 billion was spent when the PNM was in office. All right? That came about under the People's Partnership. In fact, later on down in the article, it speaks about how much money the PNM would have spent, a total of about 6 to 7 billion. So first point needed to be raised right there. Okay? We'll continue.
not me. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm not referring to a couple $1,000s here and there. I'm not even referring to some hundreds of thousands of dollars. I am speaking of close to $500 million. I would descend to particulars, spent on a particular firm, Deloitte and Touche, close to $400 million, not hired by me. That is a team that I see that I will have to repeat often this afternoon, and lawyers to support them. Now, they haven't paid Deloitte and Touche since 2022. So it begs the question, what is going on? They've been taking work from Deloitte and Touche since 2022. And then they have the temerity to come to this house to ask me, I want to see what is going to happen with the corruption investigations. They've been freeloading. Freeloaded. You run up astronomical amounts of money, run away, asking questions, and then on my first few days inside here, what went up with the corruption investigations? Well, Deloitte and Touche down tools, as they were supposed to do. Now, I'm coming to the sabotage point shortly.
So let's address that one too. All right. Another article. You get this one here. Where is it? Daily Express, December 9th, 2023. So you heard him say they stopped paying Deloitte and Touche since 2022 and what was going on. Report to be made public. PM laments fate of $100 million CLICO inquiry. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said yesterday the government would table in the appropriate place the report of the Commission of Inquiry into the drowning of the divers. The Prime Minister was speaking yesterday at a news conference saying he had received a very impertinent request from a member of the media asking him whether the report would be made public before the cabinet has a chance to sanitize it and so on. Rowley said a lot of people had a lot to say while the evidence of the Commission of Inquiry was being taken and the government did not influence any of it. So he's speaking about the inquiry into the divers who lost their lives, right? And then he goes on to draw a parallel. The Prime Minister also said he was inclined to bring an end to the CLICO probe, noting there was a very expensive Commission of Inquiry into the CLICO collapse. He said the Anthony Coleman report was submitted to him and shared with the Attorney General, and the Director of Public Prosecutions because there was a recommendation that 2 or 3 people should face criminal examination. He said, as he attempted to lay the report in Parliament, the DPP intervened and basically directed that the report ought not to be laid in Parliament because it would negatively influence the criminal prosecution that was imminent. Imminent since 2016. He said as a responsible Prime Minister, he did not lay the report in Parliament based on the intervention of the DPP because the expectation was that imminent action was about to be taken. In other words, man and woman was going to get locked up. This is the impression that he would have formed based on what he was told by the DPP in his request for the Prime Minister and the government not to lay the report, the CLICO report, which the Attorney General laid on Friday. He goes on to say, as far as I'm aware, that report is still under that sanction. In the meantime, I have listened to some of my colleagues, parliamentarians, accusing me and the government of hiding the report and leaving it on the shelf to gather dust. I can tell you, none of those comments have any validity. The only reason why the report was not laid in Parliament was because of the request of the Director of Public Prosecutions to refrain from doing so as to allow criminal prosecution to take place, he said. Thus far, No prosecution has taken place. So long before Jeremy come on Friday to complain about the prosecution and nobody get charged and the investigation, Dr. Rowley sounded the alarm bell on that. Rowley recalled that there was a commission of inquiry into the overcrowding of the National Stadium for the 1998 World Cup qualifying football match. And he said after many moons of this immongal commission of inquiry and nothing being produced, the Manning administration had to take the difficult decision to end what was appearing to be an endless cost-incurring inquiry, where the principal actor, Jack Warner, was never called before the inquiry, and we had no idea if he was going to be called or when the inquiry was going to end. So it seems that there is a pattern coming out of commissions of inquiry in this country, that money is spent on the commission of inquiry, but when it comes to laying charges and the investigation that is supposed to unearth the evidence to lay those charges, it doesn't reach that standpoint. And who is responsible for investigating? Not the Prime Minister, not the Attorney General, not the government, the police. But we'll hear further just now from AG Jeremy. The Prime Minister went on to say, I can tell you now a similar situation exists with the Anthony Coleman inquiry, and the government will have to take a decision. Because after the last time I inquired, the figure I seem to recall is 100 million plus spent on that inquiry, which the UNC, the People's Partnership, initiated while they were in office. And I don't know of a single page or any report produced by it. There was one situation where the recipient of that largest, the 100 million plus, accosted me to lobby for a particular payment. And when I inquired what was the size of the payment, I was told on that occasion that the payment was $45 million. And when I asked what had been submitted so far, I was told that the company had read 30 million pages of CLICO documents. I saw sometime later on that there was a statement that the company had concluded scanning the CLICO documents, and apparently the assignment was to scan every document that CLICO had. I wonder who he's talking about. Which company is that? Noting that the Enron matter had come to a head in 6 months' time, even though it involved billions and billions of dollars, Prime Minister Rowley said, the bottom line is that if we have spent 100 million in scanning every page of CLICO's history, how much do we intend to pay to have them read? And the people of Trinidad and Tobago will have to take a decision as to whether this largesse should continue or whether we should cut our losses. In 2009, this whole thing, the CLICO collapse, started. This is now 2023, and I am minded to advise the cabinet to put an end to this. So when Mr. Jeremy wants to come and talk rubbish about who played golf and who wasn't playing golf and who was responsible and money spent, as you will hear just now, understand that since 2023, Dr. Rowley, then Prime Minister, sounded the alarm bell, right? And expressed his view with respect to the very same thing that Jeremy now come to talk about. He's in the unenviable. When he couldn't pronounce it the second time, he decided he was in the unwelcomed position. Okay? So let me go back to the Attorney General, but I thought I would just make mention of that beforehand for a new troll I see here by the name of Ryan Matthews. But I will not be distracted yet. All right? Ryan, hold your horses.
Now, it would be one thing if Deloitte and Touche and the persons hired for the Director of Public Prosecutions had managed to charge someone. But you know how many people have been charged? Not one single person. None. $500 million for what? Nothing.
How much money they spent for the inquiry into Las Alturas? Remember when they came in 2010 and they told us how much money Calder had thief and how many billions Calder had thief and his brother-in-law thief and Manning thief? How many people got arrested and charged there, Mr. Matthews? Police ever questioned Calder Hart? The party that you support, Calder Hart thief and Calder Hart and Calder Hart. Where is Mr. Hart today? Enjoying life in Florida, I believe. All the money that was spent for that commission of inquiry. And to date, the police have never questioned him. He has never seen police bracelets. Years later, but then the thief, and Manning thief. I continue. But you hypocrites want to come on my live and talk nonsense? I ain't ready to address you fully yet. Stick around.
Now, those figures that I've given, that 3 to 4 billion, it doesn't include liquidators' expenses. And we know how those go. Madam Deputy Speaker, I've asked myself a number of times a couple of questions. All of this money that has been shelled out, how much of it has been actually recovered? I just said nobody's being charged. What about if they got back 50 cents? That's one question. Secondly, who has been held to account for what is indisputably the biggest and largest case of fraud and financial tragedy in Trinidad and Tobago and possibly the Caribbean? And finally, who has benefited from all of this wanton spending on professional charges? Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, the citizens surely have not benefited. And I heard my friend, I think, Sotoboshi from Trinity Maloney say, not me. But you know why? Because she doesn't play golf. That's the reason why. That's the reason why. Madam Speaker, you know who else hasn't benefited? The citizens of the Republic have not benefited. So it is not only the non-golf players, it is the citizens. I don't play golf either, but the citizens have not benefited. The report that I lay before the Parliament today itself came at a cost of approximately $150 million. That's how much it cost in terms of Sir Anthony Coleman and the attorneys who had been hired. The commission was appointed in 2010. This report is dated the 2nd of June 2016. And I've said before, it has never seen the light of day. Now, why has that happened? Well, before Trinity Maloney says, no, it hasn't.
I heard the Prime Minister there in the background saying they hide it, right? But I just read for you all what Dr. Rowley's position was and this nonsense. Up to today, she's still talking nonsense about they were hiding it. And Dr. Rowley told you why it was not laid in Parliament. Okay? Because the DPP said, prosecution, imminent. Man go in and get locked up. So don't lay it. Hold your horses, hold your hand. Imminent. His words. So when you hear in the background the Prime Minister talking about they was hiding, rubbish. Since 23, Dr. Rowley explained that.
I mean hiding, and I like Trinity Maloney very much. I'm not going to be attacking Trinity Maloney. Trinity Maloney does not know because she was not in the inner circle and she was not on the greens, the golf course. Okay? So, why has it not seen the light of day? Well, I investigated that matter. There was, first of all, the report was done on a typewriter by Anthony Coleman. So, it never went online. There was no electronic copy. And then...
So, firstly, the report was done on a typewriter by Sir Anthony Coleman. It never went online, right? Who hired the Secretariat to work with Sir Anthony Coleman? Bearing in mind, they were the ones who established that commission of inquiry, right? So, as part of, they requested it, okay? So, part of the process is that although he was a loan commissioner, you are supposed to provide him with a secretariat and everything that he needs to be able to do the work. So, he would have a office space. He would have, staff available to him who would sort out the documents and who taking notes and all of these different things. So to hear the Attorney General come and talk now about the report was done on a typewriter by Sir Anthony Coleman is an indictment on the UNC, because you all need to tell us why wasn't he provided with a laptop? Why wasn't he provided with staff to assist him in the production of the report? Rather than, if it's really a typewriter, he sit down in front of a typewriter, type in, when you're supposed to have a secretariat assisting him. Don't put that on the PNM. When the PNM came into office, the Commission of Inquiry was ended, and we were just awaiting the report. Okay? We go again.
Sir Anthony Coleman died, and perhaps some persons might have thought there was an opportunity in there. But these reports go from the author to Her Excellency the President. I called the President. I know that we are not supposed to use the President's name inside here. But I withdraw that. There was no copy of this report in.
Now, why would you call the President to ask for a copy of the report when the President at the time was not the current President? All right? In fact, we've had, one other president. So we are on the third president since, because the president at that time would have been Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona. The report would have gone to him. And he, being a former jurist, a former High Court judge, is fully aware of how these things work. So maybe you should have called him. And then after him, we had another jurist, Justice Paula May Weeks. And after her, we have the current president, who is Christine Kangaloo, who I believe is an attorney. So why are you calling her? Is it the practice, as he said, the report goes from the author, the commissioner, to the president? It is not for the president to keep. It then has to go to the government, who would have been responsible for, because they were the ones who made the request to initiate the Commission of Inquiry. So what was the sense, the thinking in calling the president? Unless you were playing smart with foolishness. And especially since it is not the president who was in office at that time. And I am pretty certain, as an attorney, that Mr. Jeremy is well acquainted with the man who was the president then, Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona. Sure as your partner. Because he was probably lawyer when you were lawyer, because Jeremy has been a lawyer for a long time. So I'm sure before Carmona became a judge, before he became president, he and Jeremy were probably practicing law around the same time. Because around similar age, Carmona might be a little older, but most likely they would have been practicing around the same time. I'm sure he probably can pick up a phone and call Carmona. But I want you to understand the games that these people play. These parliamentarians.
In the offices of the President of the Republic. That's one copy. Sure. Sir Anthony Coleman is dead. There was no copy of the report in the offices of a particular man with a particular hairstyle. It's bald in nature, and he lives somewhere in Western Trinidad, accustomed to calling African males dogs. I fell into that category.
So we know what you're talking about here, right? And this is the Attorney General speaking in the Parliament, and hear how he is describing the former Prime Minister. All of that was totally unnecessary. They simply say there was no copy in the office of the Prime Minister. No need to even make reference to Dr. Rowley. Why? Because Dr. Rowley vacated the office of Prime Minister long before this man became Attorney General. All right? And the present occupier of the office is Kamla Prasad Bisesa. So, since you could have called the current president to inquire as to whether or not a copy of the report existed, then why are you referring to Dr. Rowley? You didn't make any reference to Carmona. So why make reference to Dr. Rowley? Make reference to Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Say that there was no copy in the office of the, let me keep it respectful, the woman who sits to your left. I'm not going to go down the road that he's going to go down to engage in any derogatory descript of someone who held such high office, right? I wouldn't go down in the gutter as he did to talk about who had a Dr. Rowley, but he didn't call the name, you know, to call in African males dogs. As far as I know, the only African male Dr. Rowley ever referred to as a dog is he. Just him. So to make it sound like something Dr. Rowley does and he calls people dog, you are the only person that I could recall Dr. Rowley ever referred to as a dog, sir. So to make it seem as if it's a habitual thing he used to do and you fall into that, you in that category by yourself. We continue.
None in his office. None in his office. And I hesitated to check to see if there were any at his home. None in his office. None in the office of the Attorney General.
Mm-hmm.
The report could not be found for months.
You notice he left out one office. He checked in the office of the president, the office of the prime minister, the office of the attorney general, but no mention about the office of the DPP. All right? The DPP, who Dr. Rowley said since 2023, but before that, would have advised not to lay the report, as I just read for you. So it didn't occur to this eminent senior counsel, who are all the parties that would have gotten a copy? President, okay, but we're just going to the president for transmission on to. All right. We've had several commissions of inquiry before, so we're familiar with the process. He was Attorney General at one point in time, twice, I believe. I'm sure that there were commissions of inquiry that took place under him, so he is intimately familiar with the process. The report couldn't be found for months, the last thing you just heard him say there. But it didn't occur to him to call Roger Gaspard, the DPP, the current DPP, who was also DPP at the time that the report, that the commission of inquiry was had and the report was submitted. It didn't occur to him, this brilliant attorney, to seek out the DPP to see if he had a copy. Okay? That makes sense to him. These people are intent on turning the parliament into a comedy show. Let's go again.
The permanent secretary to the Ministry of the Attorney General couldn't find it. The permanent secretary to the office of the Prime Minister could not find it. No copies anywhere.
But you were persistent.
I was persistent. And eventually, I managed to get my hands on the report, and the report is before us today.
Would have been nice if he told us where he got the report from. He didn't state. Would have been good, you know. So if he told us where he had gotten it from, then we could deduce, well, why didn't you look there in the first place? But remember, you're paying this brilliant attorney tens of thousands of dollars every month to do what he does.
I apologize for the markings on the report, but those markings are testament to where I might have received the report from. That individual might have marked the report. And the markings all are in a place which repays reading. It is before us, so we can see it. Now, the report itself now we're on the point about the disappearance of the report. But there was something else that was strange about this whole thing. You see, if the member for Superior happens to have a burglary at her house, 4 or 5 police officers would be assigned to investigate the burglary. If a television set is lost or stolen, 4 or 5 officers will investigate the theft of the television set. And the same for the Honorable Minister of Finance, Minister Tanku. But do you know what? This report, which I've said, chronicles the largest financial fraud in the history of this country. Do you know how many people were investigating this matter? How many police officers? 5 people investigating the theft of a TV or a Converse shoe. But how many people are investigating this report? No more police officers than 3, and in some cases 1.
What?
And on very few occasions, none.
And again, I ask the question, who is responsible for assigning investigative officers to investigate crimes or possible crimes? Is it the Prime Minister? Is it the Minister of National Security? Is it the President? Maybe I confused, but I thought the person who has the control, the ultimate remit of the police service is the Commissioner of Police. Just say, I don't know. Maybe I have it wrong. I don't know where he's going with that, but all right, we continue.
Now, the report comes with a number of documents.
Mhm.
It comes with tens of millions of emails, financial accounting records, forensic analysis, sufficient to prove numerous complex cross-border transactions, 6,414 pieces of electronic evidence, 1,650 boxes of hard copy boxes. Well, God alone knows what's in those boxes. Now, but who's checking on this? One police officer? It is impossible. So I want colleagues to know that something took place in the investigation of this matter. Now you might ask, what is that thing? Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's come to my attention that there was a particular gentleman in, not the Attorney General immediately before me, my good friend from Trinity Maloney, or the one before her, but perhaps the one before him, I'm not sure. But the one several times removed. They had quite a few. That gentleman sat on the board of one of the entities that Mr. Coleman had quite a lot to say in this report. And I mean, what he says is that I know I don't want to read it, but
Yes, put it in the report. Put it in the report. That's it.
okay, my colleagues are asking.
Put it in the report. Yes.
I bow to pressure at times, so that I didn't know that I would be asked that, but I am a man who normally prepares. So I have the quote
Yes.
verbatim for us. In section 5 of the report, under the heading recommendations, and this deals with Clico Investment Bank. I haven't mentioned any names.
Paris.
Section Roman V18 states, as regards Clico Investment Bank, conspiring during the period from 1 January 2002 to 30th March 2009, together with the principal officers and members from time to time of the board of directors and or the managers of so-and-so, in particular, one Lawrence Dupree, now deceased, and Richard Trotman, referred collectively to as the co-conspirators. Now that's a serious term there. Because we all know that, I mean, even my friend, my former student, would understand what a conspiracy is. It's an agreement between two persons
Very familiar.
to do that which is unlawful. Now, and they go on, to defraud depositors from time to time in CIB by agreeing, this, not my word, dishonestly to put at risk the value and recoverability of the assets available to meet liabilities to those depositors. Well, then he's saying, so he doesn't have the power to charge, but he's saying, call the police. Now he goes on, this is Mr. Coleman. He goes on to talk about a Ponzi scheme and the like. But the fact is, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the task that has now fallen to me is to decide on a way forward this afternoon.
Now we are trying to implicate a former Attorney General. You read something and nowhere in what you read there points to this individual. Now everybody knows that, as you heard the Prime Minister kept saying, Faris, former Attorney General. It is a known fact that Faris, prior to becoming Attorney General, prior to the collapse of CL Financial, was a director on the board of CL Financial, right? Give me 1 second. Let me get this here. Right. Let me get this here. Where is it? Yes. Okay. And I'm quoting Faris here. Please all remember, I have never had control of these matters as I recused myself from day one as Attorney General. Also, Prime Minister Rowley made a statement on the matter as to why he did not lay the report, and the DPP asking him not to release it. So Faris, from day one, recused himself as AG, dealing with this matter. Okay? Never mind the fact that the Commission of Inquiry was concluded before he became Attorney General, but with respect to the handling of the report, he recused himself. So when you see the UNC talking about recusal and Faris and Stuart Young and Faris and Stuart Young and how much time they recused themselves, understand, this is one of the recusals and why they recused themselves, all right? Because Faris sat on the board, he understands why it makes sense to recuse oneself. Recusals, which between 2010 to 2015 was almost non-existent because man said, to hell with that. Who will know? And even if they know, who cares? So I have an interest, something comes before the cabinet, and I have an interest in this matter. To hell with that. We have no, according to Verna St. Rose Graves, there were no minutes taken of cabinet meetings. So they wouldn't know who recused and who didn't recuse, who was present at the meeting and who wasn't present and all of that. So I am recusing myself. But as Faris indicated, he would have recused himself in this matter. So while your goodly Attorney General is seeking to cast aspersions, and he knows why he didn't call a name, he called no names. He was very careful not to call Faris's name, but his boss, as irresponsible as she is, and probably acting under parliamentary privilege, took the liberty to call her name. I go again.
This fork in the road, whether to continue this decades-long joke of an investigation, because that is what it was. Spending money on lawyers, billions of dollars on lawyers, and not having people check boxes or putting one police officer to watch a box. What are you doing there?
Watching a box.
Watching a box. Because the lawyers will say, I need X or Y or Z. The lawyers are not police officers. The lawyers say, I need X or Y or Z. You have one police officer, sometimes three, less than investigating the theft of Minister Tanku's TV. Nothing happens. So this is a joke of an investigation. What do I do?
This is a joke of an investigation. Who was the commissioner of police? Or the commissioners of police overseeing this investigation over the years? Right? Who? As I said, when CL Financial Clico collapsed in 2009, January or thereabout, and the PNM left office just about a year and a half later, everything was still fresh. They were the ones who initiated the inquiry, the People's Partnership, the UNC. They would have presided over the early days of any investigation and so on. We had Stephen Williams. We had, we also had James Philbert. We had, who else? We had Gary Griffith. We had McDonald Jacob. You like to call names? Keith Rowley was never the commissioner of police, as far as I know. Faris Al-Rawi was never the commissioner of police. So if you are suggesting that perhaps instructions may have been given to the commissioner to scuttle any investigations, tell us which commissioner those instructions went to. Call names. Call names. Don't come in the parliament and hide under privilege. Call names and tell us, did you speak to each of these commissioners to inquire as to what was the status, if they ever looked into this investigation? What was the status of the investigation? Did you inquire from the senior officers, the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau, why only one officer or two officers or three officers were assigned to this thing? Did you do that? Before you come to the parliament to create couture and bacchanal, that is what you should have done. But you see, this is a party, a government that is based on propaganda, misinformation, old talk, stupidness, put things out there that has no merit, no basis in fact, because they know the supporters will take it and run with it. And all the mouthpieces that they're putting now, they remove them from social media and giving them paid positions to reward them for spreading years of propaganda, because we fell down when it came to nullifying the propaganda. So all of them who was on Facebook and TikTok and had a comment and contributed to them being in office today, they have now found an ingenious way to reward them, give them position and TTT, right? So now I was surprised when a couple days ago I saw TTD Limited put out this post with pictures of all the hosts, the radio talk show hosts for the various radio stations and the times that they're coming on. And I am seeing now a plethora of UNC mouthpieces, propagandists from social media are now sitting on radio stations, on government radio stations from morning till evening. Stefan Rees from Synergy TV, Professor Misinformation, also known as Heavy, who used to be on 91.9. He and another one named Surat Pasad, another UNC propagandist. Two of them have a show. And then you have the Underground Report, Andy Williams and Lennox Smith. They too, all of them get work in TTT and radio stations now to continue their propaganda. And you, the taxpayer, paying these guys to reward them for being good lackeys, for being good purveyors of untruths, good liars, to help them get into office, and now they must be rewarded. Otherwise, they might start to talk against the government when they ain't get nothing. You know? When they start to suffer from didn't get, what happens? As was the case with the PNM, when certain people felt that they should have get and didn't get, and very early turned their back on the party and started badmouth the party all over the place. I wouldn't call names, but you all know who they are. And the UNC learned from that. So before any of their mouthpieces, their propagandists become infected or develop should I get, didn't get, let us give. Take a listen. Go on TTT website, TTT Facebook page, and you will see the post and the flyer with all the propagandists there and what time they will be on and all who know eating our food. Well, I don't know what happened to Kingsley because I noticed his picture wasn't there and no mention, so I don't know if they changed their mind about him. But the rest of them, they're there. PNM never do that, but PNM corrupt. And all the years of thing like this. Okay, we continue.
Well,
bear with me, you almost finished.
As guardian of the public interest and having consulted with the Honorable Prime Minister, I have to say that we are not able to continue to spend hard resources, government resources, and we are not able to authorize and to allow for the spending on professional services to persons who are sometimes golfers, but always very wealthy, homes in various parts of the world, in the United Kingdom, in Barbados. Some of us live next door to the Governor General of Barbados. We are not able to continue to spend money on that. So that now I have to be careful. We are also not able to bring an end to any criminal investigation. That is a matter which is entirely within the remit of the Director of Public Prosecutions. I can, however, end civil proceedings, and I propose to do so now in a cost-effective manner, having regard to the fact that the state has commenced some of these proceedings and might be required to meet some reasonable cost to exit the proceedings. Now, as far as the central bank is concerned, I want to see that I am not going to make a decision with respect to the central bank and its matters. Years ago, I was involved as representing the sixth defendant in a matter brought by the central bank, and I do not think that it would be appropriate for me to get involved in that. In any event, the relevant...
So in other words, he will recuse himself from the central bank matters with respect to any suit, right? Because why? He, years ago, before he became Attorney General, represented one of the defendants that the central bank sued. All right? And he feels, because of propriety and given his proximity to this defendant vis-a-vis central bank, he ought to recuse himself. Similar to what Faris did, but he didn't see it fit to tell you that Faris recused himself, right? Instead, I will put something out there. I'm going to call Faris' name, but I just want to sow seeds of Couture and Bacchanal, and I will leave it up to my Prime Minister, who has a penchant for being irresponsible. She could call names, but I wouldn't tarnish my fledgling reputation and call names. We continue. Bear with me, just a little bit longer.
One person to treat with the central bank is the Minister of Finance. I say this, however, the Minister of Finance is entitled, notwithstanding the fact that the central bank is independent, the Minister of Finance is entitled to take a decision with respect to this matter and costs and the effects of wanton spending on the profits and dividends which the central bank pays to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, which are derived from the management of the bank's dealings in foreign exchange. And I am told that he will be writing to the bank this afternoon with respect to the government's general policy. I thank you, Madam Vice President, and the report is based.
So you talk about monies expended with this CLICO matter and sought to lay 150% blame for this whole CLICO collapse and all who was sitting on board and who was playing golf and who part now at the feet of the People's National Movement. But let us examine, right? Because all this expenditure and all of this could have been avoided. All the billions that you talk about and professional fees and how much, $500 million in professional fees and who owe and what, all of that could have been avoided years ago. In fact, perhaps even the collapse of CLICO could have been avoided years ago. How? Let me jog the memory of some of the hypocritical supporters of that other party. Permit me. All right? I'm reading here from a piece written by Afra Raymond, July 26, 2017, entitled CL Financial Bailout, The Tangled Web. I'm not going to read the whole thing, just one little piece. Where did this collapse of CLICO originate? When did it begin? I'm just reading this paragraph. The battle for control of CLF unfolded rapidly last week, with the shareholders attempting to regain control of the troubled group by calling a special general meeting to appoint 2 directors to the board. The state's preliminary application to the court to appoint 2 liquidators was defeated on Wednesday, 19 July 2017. Justice Kevin Ramcharan, one of the newest batch of High Court judges, ruled after a 7-hour hearing against the state's submission that the effect of the proposed board appointments would be to endanger the public money spent thus far on this immense bailout. So in 2017, the government of Keith Rowley was since then expressing concerns, I will repeat here, the danger of public money spent thus far on this immense bailout, right? That it would endanger the public money spent. So they were concerned about the amount since 2017, after having come back into 2 years, after having come back into office, after the UNC presided over this matter for 5 years, 3 months and 14 days, very early on in the 10-year tenure of the People's National Movement, concerns were being expressed by that then Keith Rowley government about the amount of money spent and value for that money. But that's not what I wanted to read. This is the part. The lead attorney for Lawrence Dupree and his cohort is former Attorney General Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, senior counsel, hear this, who was, to my memory, the first public official to sound the alarm as to the insolvency of CLICO in 2001. Let me repeat that. The lead attorney for Lawrence Dupree and his cohort is former Attorney General Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, senior counsel, who was, to my memory, after Raymond, the first public official to sound the alarm as to the insolvency of CLICO in 2001. You all know what insolvency means? There have money going on. Maharaj was referring to the 1997 report of the supervisor of insurance, which stated that CLICO was technically insolvent. His alarming disclosure was taken up by Trevor Sudama, who was also a UNC MP at the time, and Camille Robinson Regis, who was a PNM MP then in opposition. That warning and his unforgettable quip, when asked who he was speaking about, I do pray, led to his dismissal as Attorney General, and history is truly rich in irony. Who was in power in 1997? Who was the government? Not Kid Rowley, not Patrick Manning, and not the PNM. Who was it? The UNC. Who was the Prime Minister? Basdio Pandey. Who was part of that government? The current Prime Minister, One Kamla Persad Bissessa. So since 1997, when the supervisor of insurance submitted a report sounding alarm bells of CLICO's technical insolvency, what did the government of the day do to address the situation way back then? 12 years before they collapsed? Absolutely nothing. 1997, 98, 99, 2000, election, they win. 2001, nothing. But we know we had persons who were affiliated back then with CL Financial who were sitting as government ministers, the likes of one Mr. Carlos John, who was there. Then we know the saga of Mr. Pandey and his alleged relationship with CL Financial and the London bank account and all of that. You all remember that? But it seems that escapes the memory of our present Attorney General, who seeks to put the blame squarely at the feet for this whole fiasco at the feet of the People's National Movement. As Afra Raymond reminded us, when Mr. Maharaj spoke about, I do pray, and he lost his job, was fired. I wonder why, boy. What did Mrs. Persad Bissessa have to say then? What was the position of John Jeremy then with respect to that? Was he concerned as a citizen? And then when the PNM came in under Mr. Manning, and at some point in time, during that tenure, when Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Conrad Enel, also raised concerns about the solvency of CL Financial, you all remember what happened? The men and women of letters, all the intellectuals, the economists and who not, and members of the then UNC opposition who wanted to lynch Mr. Enel because he was so irresponsible as minister in the Ministry of Finance to make such a statement. And that could cause a run on the company, and it could impact investor confidence and the confidence of the customers and of the entity. And people could go and want to pull out their money and surrender the policies and all of that. And that could cause the company to collapse. They nearly kill Enel. Right? Badger him into silence when he raised the issue of solvency, because CLICO was too big to fail, and all who had money and who were eating our food and getting big interest and find that the government should hush their mouth. And Enel, what the hell wrong with you? Shh, hush your mouth. Okay? So since 97, they should have addressed this issue. And had they dealt with it then when CLICO was technically insolvent, everything that ensued after that, all of the acquisitions that CL Financial made, all of the investments in real estate, and all of the investments in equities and so on, which contributed and impacted the liquidity of the company and the ability for them to be able to make certain payments, which led to the drawdown in 2009 when people started hearing rumors and were running to take out their money in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And the company did not have the liquidity to be able to pay out these requests because money was tied up in real estate in Trinidad, One Woodbrook Place, and this mall, and that mall, and Millennium Lakes, and investments, real estate investments in Miami, and all of these different places. When the money was spent there, and I always say, Dupre's problem was that he was too ambitious, wanted to do too much, too quickly. And they were offering these high interest rates when people were asking, like myself, who in the financial sector was saying, why is CL Financial paying out all of these high interest rates to attract monies that they are now using to expand business when they could go to finance houses and pay lesser interest rates, right? Borrow the money and pay lower interest rates rather than you're paying these high interest rates to investors so that you could use their money for this expansion. But you see, greed blinds people. It clouds the mind, because when you're seeing 10% and 15% at a time when they established the other financial institutions, like the banks paying you 2% and 3%, and yeah, what that? And you're not asking yourself, well, how come the unit trust and the banks and everybody else only paying 2 and 3%, and this entity paying 10 and 15? How come? What are they doing differently? They weren't interested because there's greed, and everybody want big money, putting the big money there. But since 97, when the supervisor of insurance laid the report and said they were technically insolvent, Prasad Bisesta was part of that administration. Subsequent to that, she became Attorney General when Ramesh was fired. And her only concern was how to fire Lindquist and how to fire Carl Hudson Phillips with respect to the investigation to the Piarco Airport. That was her priority. Nobody was studying CLICO then because everybody was Dupre's friend. And Dupre knew how to deal with the situation. All right? I never hear nobody say Patrick Manning was Dupre's friend. I didn't hear nobody say Conrad Allen was Dupre's friend. The only person we heard that they said, okay, Paris was on the board and he recused himself as he should have. Same way this Attorney General made it a point to indicate that he's recusing himself from any matters related to Central Bank and CL. But they did nothing. When they could have treated with it in the early stages, they did nothing. Before it reached gangrenous, where you had to amputate, when you could have treated it with medication in the early days and prevent what happened in 2009, they weren't interested in doing that. And so the collapse came under the People's National Movement, and it was left to them to treat with the situation. And all of a sudden, the UNC ready to pelt blame and 150% blame on the PNM. But as I read for you all before, the bulk of the money that was paid out to bail out CL Financial didn't happen under the PNM, as Dukaran said. Didn't happen under the PNM. We go in again. Mr. Jeremy also spoke about what Anthony Coleman had to say about certain attorney. And we know who you're referring to, but you heard what he said. There was no mention made of Faris specifically. But let's talk about some other costs, because he's so concerned about how much money was spent and wastage. And Express article dated October 13, 2012, Ramesh, money wasted to change CLICO attorneys. Who was in government on the 13th of October 2012? Not the PNM. Attorney Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, Senior Counsel, representing the CLICO United Policyholders Group, yesterday called on the government to explain why the team of lawyers representing the Ministry of Finance was fired in the middle of a commission of inquiry into the collapse of CLICO. Maharaj questioned why more money is being spent on legal fees instead of paying the full sum of money due to policyholders on the executive flexible premium annuities. Speaking at a meeting with CLICO policyholders at City Hall Auditorium in San Fernando, Maharaj said, in the middle of a commission of inquiry, one set of lawyers are relieved and new lawyers are appointed. The government will have to pay more money for those lawyers. You have distinguished lawyers like Fayad Hussain and Mr. Michael Komena, who are appearing for the government, but they were just relieved and a new group of lawyers have come into the picture. Those monies which the government is wasting can help to pay EFPA policy holders. The Express learned that the legal team headed by Hussain, Senior Counsel, and Komena was dismissed last week. They were hired by the Ministry of Finance under Winston Dukaran. They had been replaced by Sinath Jairam, Senior Counsel, leading Jagdeo Singh, who is now the Speaker of the House, and Joseph Tony. The time has come for me to say that governance under the partnership into the EFP policyholders has demonstrated that it has ignored the rights of the EFP policyholders, and it has decided that it can violate the rights. Governance under the People's Partnership seems to be governance without morality, without ethics or human value, honesty or integrity. This type of governance has damaged the image and reputation of Trinidad and Tobago when it decided not to pay EFPA policyholders. I remember the Manning administration had taken a different approach, right? People would have given back their monies, or at least the principal. The promises made by this government to bring about change of governance in Trinidad and Tobago with openness, transparency, honest and people participation has been shown to be lies and obviously intended to fool the electorate, just as they did on April 28 last year. So they changed lawyers. And as Ramesh told you, Ramesh doesn't know how much lawyers charge. So you get rid of one team and you bring in another team of lawyers. And then they did this again. How do we know that? Well, all right. We read in. We go in again. Where is it? Right. Express article dated June 25th, 2015. Coleman blames lawyers for delay. Sir Anthony Coleman, the loan commissioner in the Commission of Inquiry into the failure of CLICO and related companies, has written to President Anthony Carmona criticizing the competence of 2 attorneys employed at the commission. This, he said, has led to a delay in the submitting of the report. Now, mind you, this is 25th of June, 2015. They were still in office. This report was not delivered to the PNM until a whole year after, 2016, July of 2016. But understand, monies could have been saved since 2015, since they were in office. Instead, the whole additional year that the commission had to go on and Mr. Coleman had to do whatever, and so that was additional monies being spent. Why? Because of unnecessary delay. But we go in, where did this delay come from? This, he said, has led to the delay in submitting of the report. Coleman wrote, of the 3 local attorneys, 2 proved to be so incompetent, so inexperienced, lacking in any sense of professional responsibility that they became unavailable or only partially available. The commission's legal team, which earns $12,000 a day, included counsel for commission Peter Carter, Queen's Counsel, instructing attorney at that Celeste Jules, Gerald Ramdeen, Varun Debedine, and Shankar Bidesi, who is today the chairman of UDICOT and FCB. So they have a habit of rewarding certain attorneys. So Ramdeen is today the chair of NGC, and Bidesi is the chair of UDICOT and FCB. Right? So once the UNC is in power, certain attorneys will always eat our food, drink our juice, and belch. Okay? Nice. They were selected by former Attorney General Anand Ramlogan, contacted yesterday for comment. Debedine acknowledged that Coleman's criticism was directed at himself and Ramdeen, but that it was unwarranted. He said he was aware of the letter because he and Bidesi had sight of it when he was at the commission's new office space at Albion Plaza, Port of Spain. We have been working throughout. Shankar and I left here at 4 p.m. yesterday. Apparently, they were working 8 to 4. He said, Debedine pointed out that the Hindu Credit Union report was finished, but CLICO turned out to be bigger than expected. So I'm confused. Because Attorney General John Jeremy told us on Friday that the report was typewritten by Mr. Coleman. Mr. Coleman used a typewriter to type this 600 and something page report. But then we have this attorney here telling us, that that report took a little longer, which suggests that they had a hand in its production. Yes? And I don't think they're using typewriter. I could be wrong. I don't know how it is work. I'm confused. After all, I'm just a lowly opposition MP, right? I continue. He explained there were thousands of documents and transcripts to go through, and unfortunately, none of the attorneys was 100% dedicated to the commission because they had other legal matters. So if you were taken up with other legal matters, why did you accept the brief? Simply say, I have too much on my plate at this time. I cannot accept the brief. Thanks, but no thanks. But when you're seeing $12,000 a day and you do the maths, that is $360,000 a month. And the longer this thing is dragged out, is the more months you're working. more $12,000 a day you're getting, legitimately. So one must question, was this delay deliberate? Because General Ramdin, fool. I don't know if maybe at that time he was an idiot and maybe over the years he has matured. But that is a name that was called a lot. And he seemed to know his way around that courtroom. So I just asking if this delay was deliberate so that the more months we work in, the longer this thing drag out is more $12,000 a day, more $360,000 plus per month. You get in. So it is in your best interest. I take in that, but I chirp it. Anyway, we go on. Debedine agreed with Coleman that the commission was under-resourced, which meant they could not meet their deadline of delivering the final report in the first half of this year. So they had a deadline to deliver this report the first half of 2015. It wasn't submitted until a whole year later, 1 year late. And man continued to get $12,000 a day. So that's 1 year, one additional year, plus probably a year and a quarter of $12,000 a day, $360,000 a month. Multiply that by 12 and see what you get. And ask yourself whether or not that delay was deliberate or it's just because. But here it is, the attorneys admitting that the commission was under-resourced. They did not supply them with the personnel and the other things that they needed to be able to be effective. But this Attorney General today wants to come and put the blame on the PNM. All this money spent and all of that. That is included. All the money that was spent there that he talked about was included in that. This commission of inquiry and how much it costs, 100 million and so forth. PNM wasn't in power. PNM didn't put together that commission of inquiry. But it seems all of that escaped our learned Attorney General on Friday in his discourse. Or maybe we'll chalk it up to the limited time he had to speak. He had to truncate what he had to say and he couldn't provide us with all of that additional information. But I will. What he left out, I will remind you all of. And I continue. Debedine agreed with Coleman that the commission was under-resourced, which meant they could not meet their deadline of delivering the final report in the first half of this year. Ramdin, whose name was featured in the Prison Gate matter, most recently represented the state in the extradition matter for Chaguanas West MP and former FIFA Vice President Jack Warner. He could not be immediately reached for comment yesterday. Bidesi, the honorary secretary of the Law Association, also sits on the board of UDICOT. Today, he is the chairman of UDICOT. 2015, he was a board member. All right. Midway through the commission of inquiry, Jules had left in a 2-page letter dated June 23, which was obtained by the Express. Coleman sought an update to update Carmona on the status of the report and explaining why the CLICO report has not been forthcoming after 2 years. 2 years. Coleman said he did not have the proper support staff to complete it. Who we blaming for that? PNM? AG? Jeremy? All the money you talk about that was spent on wastage and incompetence. Who was it? Who was Coleman talking about here? PNM wasn't in power. They weren't responsible for providing him with the resources. I continue. He explained, had an inquiry of comparable scope been set up in London, there would have been at least 4 solicitors assisted by a firm of forensic accountants and 5 counsel working on it in support of the commission. So he's telling the goodly president then what should have been provided by the state. But you see, you don't want efficiency when you want a thief. So you need to under-resource so that you drag out the process, and the attorneys that you do hire, so long as the matter is ongoing, they bill in this and then they bill for the $12,000 a day. So according to Coleman, this thing should have been wrapped up 2 years earlier. So that's an additional 2 years. Plus a further one, so 3 years of $360,000 a month for each of these attorneys. But blame the PNM. The PNM is thief. PNM is wastage. He goes on to say, in the event, the instructing attorney had to drop out for family commitments, and of the 3 local attorneys, 2 proved to be so incompetent inexperience or lacking in any sense of professional responsibility that they became unavailable or partially available. This has left the Commission acutely lacking in its counsel support team, and that has caused considerable delay and imposed a massive work burden on the remaining counsel, he explained. This has been relieved to a degree by then Attorney General Anand Ramlogan appointing Marion Smith QC to assist with one limited part of the CLICO work. Nonetheless, the under-resourcing of the inquiry has proved to be a major problem, impeding its progress throughout the last 12 months. This is very much to my regret, he said, and it will be remembered that following conclusion of the public hearings in July of 2013, it was impossible for me to proceed to prepare the CLICO report because leading counsel to the inquiry, Peter Carter, Queen's Counsel, whom the Attorney General had appointed, was not available for 3 months due to a prior professional engagement, which means that Mr. Carter would have informed the Attorney General then that I will not be available for 3 months. So many other Queen's Counsels available. But I need Carter. I need Carter. Why you needed Carter? I'm not casting any aspersions. I don't know Carter. I don't know. But I'm saying that there were others. What was so special about Carter that you needed him and you needed to delay the commission by 3 months, waiting for Carter to finish a prior professional engagement? We continue. Just saying, that it was mentioned in the Vincent Nelson matter that there were some other lawyers who also participated in the enterprise to provide kickbacks. No names were mentioned. What Vincent Nelson did say that there were other Queen's Counsels who were also part of that enterprise. I just say, I was asking. Sometimes it's good to connect the dots, right? I continue. That led to the then Attorney General appointing another London QC, Edwin Glasgow QC, assisted by London Junior Counsel. DPP intervention. Coleman was appointed to head the commission into the failure of CLICO and related companies, as well as the HCU in November 2010 by former President Max Richards. He has also submitted the report into the HCU on July 2014, which has been forwarded to the Director of Public Prosecutions. Coleman explained that he was aware of concerns in the media about the timeline and sought to update him on the status. The first draft of all except one of the substantive sections of the report has now been completed. Before the report can be delivered, letters have been sent by the Commission to all those adversely criticized in the draft, and each person has been given an opportunity to respond within a limited time. In order to assist recipients to understand the criticisms, each has to be supplied with references to the evidence. After the responses have been received, I will consider them and decide whether to make any amendments to the draft before it is presented. The letters referred to above are now in the course of preparation. Because of the amount of work involved in that stage, it is not easy to predict with any accuracy how much time will be needed before the letters are sent out, and the recipients have responded and the responses have been considered. The only broad estimate that can be given at this stage is not less than 4 months, he said. In 2012, Coleman had issued his first statement on how intensive the COE had become and why he would have needed more time. I had assumed that the bulk of work could be completed in about a year, leading to a preliminary report filed sometime soon after by a full report which completed my terms of reference, including making recommendations for steps to be taken to avoid repetition of the problems which had caused so much misery to so many people and such great losses to the financial resources of the whole country. He had said in a statement to the COE. Challenges the 24-month-long COE. The 24-month-long COE, Commission of Inquiry exercise, had 85 sitting days, 23 parties, 77 lawyers, 57 witnesses, 50 subpoenas, and 5 million pages of documents. Coleman's inquiry has had its challenges. In 2013, he declined an implied request by the Director of Public Prosecutions, Roger Gaspard, to cease his public inquiry. Gaspard had written to Coleman and expressed concern that the ongoing public inquiry could impact the criminal investigation by the police, which he had announced on that same day. So since 2013, this criminal investigation into the collapse of CL Financial has been going on. We are now in 2026, 13 years now. police investigated. But the AG didn't see it fit to inquire from the Commissioner of Police, what is the status of this investigation? He saw it fit to call the sitting president. Didn't see it fit to make inquiries from previous police commissioners as to, or not even the commissioners, the head of the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau, which I suppose is the entity that would have been investigating this matter, to inquire what is the status, what is the keepback, where are we? And this sets the stage. It sets the stage. As Attorney General, he can end civil proceedings. So don't be surprised if you come and you wake up one day and you hear that the civil suit into the EMBD matter has been dropped because of the number of years and the ongoing and blah, blah, blah. And but there is still, you can have hope, there is still a criminal investigation taking place by the police. Don't mind that criminal investigation is over 10 years old, just like Prison Gate, probably other investigations as well. So you all can hold on to hope. Yes, the civil matter is dismissed, but you could still get justice through the criminal side of things. All right? Very good. You get the government that you voted for. Yeah, they are against corruption. Imagine corruption from since then, 2010 to 2015. You all put these people back in office, and you're still to date, reaping the harvest of that corruption. Continuance. So they're now back in office with the power to be able to bring all of those matters to an end without anybody making a jail and any restitution of any amount being paid. Then we read in today's Express. Harry Hanarine never questioned. Imagine that. Imagine that. So, let me get this here. Harry never quizzed by cops. In the report, Coleman had recommended that the Director of Public Prosecutions consider whether criminal charges should be laid against Hanarine for fraud and larceny during his tenure as president of the HCU. And today, the gentleman is lamenting that police never come and question me. Hear it. Former president of the Hindu Credit Union Cooperative Society Limited, Harry Hanarine, says that nearly 12 years after Sir Anthony Coleman submitted his report on the Commission of Inquiry into the failed institution, he has still never been questioned by the police. No police has ever questioned me or any member of the board. I am still awaiting to see what will happen, Hanarine told the Sunday Express. How are investigations conducted in this country? I am confused. Very confused. And all these matters continue to pile up. But just remember, don't forget, we were told and we read some time ago that the investigations into the criminal investigations into the EMBD matter and a couple other, the live sport and EMBD were shelved by the police. We had McMahon, the British investigator, and her team, whose investigation into the EMBD matter and so on and other matters was stymied because for some reason the police didn't want to get warrants to see certain documents and so on. And when the police was contacted by the reporters about, well, what's going on, and nothing forthcoming. Nothing forthcoming. Just to remind you all, right? I just say that. Yeah, but blame the PNM. PNM corrupt. Nothing to work under the PNM. Blame the PNM for that. PNM spent money to bring these bastards to justice. Now we are hearing the police, they have time for that. What do they have time for? Let me see here. Give me 1 second. Right. Let's read in the headline. Despite $1 billion spent, investigations into EMBD and live sport shelved. Article dated the 9th of February, 2025. police investigations into the EMBD and live sport matters, which were being led by British investigator Kate McMahon by a special reserve police, have been shelved. Guardian Media was told that despite the work by McMahon's team being close to completion, it has been put on pause. McMahon's team was contracted and funded by the government, the PNM government, and worked alongside the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service through the Anti-Corruption Investigations Bureau on several police investigations. McMahon's team also used Ed Jenkins KC for legal guidance in the build-out of the cases. The work fell largely under the ambit of former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. Guardian Media was told that during and after Griffith's departure, McMahon's work was being stymied and stalled by the TTPS as requests for warrants to be executed were not completed. There seems to be a lack of responsibility towards completing it, sources said. An informed source explained that the evidence gathered can still be used provided it meets the required threshold and the work can be completed if there is a commitment to doing so. Thus far, it has been reported that McMahon's team has collected 50 million in fees, and the EMBD and live sport matters were two high-profile corruption matters which the PNM campaigned on against the People's Partnership. Collectively, the misuse of money in those two matters amounted to over $1 billion in taxpayers' dollars. The TTPS could not immediately provide an update on this matter. It is also to be noted that the last PNM administration would have removed the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau under the remit of the Attorney General. This administration, early on in coming back, has now brought the ACIB back under the remit of the Attorney General. Don't forget that. Okay? So if AG Jeremy wants information as to the status of these high-profile investigations, the department that is responsible for conducting those investigations falls under his remit, under his office. So he could easily get the information. So when he comes to the parliament to try and play smart with foolishness, let him know we in tongue too long, AG. Miss us with that rubbish. Right? We ain't buying that. How you sell it, we care what upon is selling it, some of us not buying it. You could go and sell that to the fully dones. But the rest of us, we ain't taking that. All right? Last but not least, I will just touch quickly on this, too many other things to talk about, that this zones, the SOZOs they call it, Special Operation Zones, where when the state of emergency comes to an end in a few days, just under 2 weeks, right, the government has come up with this ingenious, innovative, new form of state of emergency. They're just limited. Okay, so they will target certain areas that they would consider to be crime hotspots, and they can declare special zones for up to 180 days. And if need be, if you need to impose curfews in these areas, you can do that. If you determine that there is a need for that, if there's an increase in crime in that area, or you suspect, everything to curtail the rights and freedoms, because they could, with a curfew, remember, you live in the area, you're not involved in no bacchanal, no crime, no nothing. But yet still, because a curfew might have been imposed in your immediate area, you have to make sure you reach home by a certain time. If you're outside, when curfew start, you sleep outside. Okay, so make sure you have your vex money, as they say, or that you have good relationship with family members who will allow you to bunk on the couch for the night. All right? We also voted against that. We would have articulated our reasons in the parliament for doing so. We see this for what it is. The government knows that they will not get support for a further extension of the state of emergency. And while they were promising us that they had this great crime plan in place in 6 months' time and blah, 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 what happened? They had nothing, based on what the Minister of Homeland Security would have said in the parliament. Is when he went to Jamaica with Sean Sobers last year, when they had the CARICOM heads of government meeting, and Mrs. Prasad Bisesa wasn't inclined to go, and she sent her proxies, Sean Sobers, Mr. Alexander, and Ralph Maraj, and he had conversations with Mr. Horace Chang, who I believe is the Deputy Prime Minister of Jamaica and also the Minister of National Security, and in those conversations, this special zones, operation zones, and came up. And he got a brilliant idea, and he came back and, proposed it seems, to the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. And they said, well, yeah, let me go with that now, because we need something. Yeah, come up with something. So, yeah, start a draft legislation. They all do research, find out how it works in Jamaica, right? And let me put it in place now. Hey, we find out a crime plan. Very good, Roger. Congratulations. Give him a pat on the back there, boy. Yeah, man. You come through there. A good thing, because we were drawing blanks. It was looking like we would have had to just bring this SOE to an end, wait a week, and then bring it back. But you came up with a bright idea there. So, all who planning protest and whatnot and want to burn tie and all that, just know when they decide to deal with all you. Okay? I guess that's some good news for Olive Jack, because this is the woman who was incarcerated since last year, November, I think it was, because of things that she said on TikTok, which was deemed to be a threat, offensive to the Prime Minister. And she was denied the opportunity to spend Christmas with her family for the first time. She's still incarcerated, and no charge has been laid against her as far as we know. And so at the end of this month, when the state of emergency comes to an end, the detention order that has her currently incarcerated should come to an end as well, and she should be reunited with her family. And hopefully she would have learned her lesson. Courtesy the government of Trinidad and Tobago, that anytime you decide to run your mouth on the Prime Minister, there will be consequences. All right? And yeah. And then to listen to Wayne Sturge on Friday talk about, criminal elements and the PNM, and isn't this man for real? Boss man, it is in the public domain. The reason why you have all this set of security now is because people looking for you, allegedly, certain criminal elements who allegedly funded your campaign to the tune of some $20 million to help you to win Grandy. No PNM candidate spent that kind of money. None. Okay, I didn't spend that. Certainly not. I didn't have that kind of money. Right? And all the claims of heavy spending on the part of election candidates, those claims reside squarely in the camp of the UNC. All right? No PNM candidate has been accused of cavorting with any criminals and being funded by any criminals and making any promises to any criminals to give them anything should we win office. All those claims are against UNC candidates. Just reminding you all that. So all the trolls who want to come on my live and talk garbage, these things that you all don't seem to hear these things, right? Well, they want to go back to O'Halloran and Privat, go back 5 and 6 decades and tell us about Marlene McDonald, all this sort of rubbish and garbage. But can't see under your own nose how many ministers in this current administration who before the courthouse. That's why I wanted to ask David Lee on Friday before the Deputy Speaker cut me off. Right? As we were debating that bill on the traffic fines, I wanted to ask him, so if based on what Saddam said, in terms of who is liable if the police were to put a fixed penalty notice on your windshield for some breach of traffic regulation. If they put a police officer or a licensing officer were to put a fixed penalty notice on the G-Wagon, who is liable to pay it? Lee or Leon Poi? Which one? Which one of the two are you all paying it? Can I say you own it, but Leon Poi driving it? So who will be responsible? I just ask him. And of course, I had to remind him. Saddam, that is, talking about, people not transferring the vehicles and crime and all that. Yes, and a former Attorney General who served between 2010 to 2014, the titular head of the bar, who sold his Range Rover, and for 15 months he did not transfer it, and the person that he sold the car to was enjoying all of the benefits and privileges ascribed to that particular vehicle. Okay? So, well, I want to talk rubbish and cast aspersion and come and talk nonsense about the PNM this and the PNM that. Just remember, you're living in big, big glass palaces, not glass houses, palaces, and want to pelt stone? Well, you're brave. The PNM is like David, with our little slingshot and pebbles, right? And we have plenty pebbles to pelt. So while you come in with what you perceive to be a big stone, just remember, the heavier the stone, the harder it is to pelt. But when you have your slingshot, your little pebbles, might take a few more, but it's just as effective. Don't forget, David took down Goliath with one. You like to talk garbage? All right. One more thing. What is the murder rate here to date? Anybody can tell me that? Because all of a sudden, the entities that used to love to publish that between 2015 to 2025, they seem to have forgotten how to do that. They don't know how to get the information. But let me see here. There is one particular source who used to publish that. And based on his figures up to 1 hour ago, it's 22 homicides so far, 22 in 18 days. But it doesn't take into account, I read a story where 2 persons were murdered overnight. And so perhaps he didn't see that story as yet, so we can add that. And then there was a gentleman by the name of Sir something Rampasad who went missing, and his body has been found. So he too was murdered. So we're looking at about 25, 26 murders for the year so far. And while the government will come to the parliament and talk about 42% decrease in murders, and I kept shouting across, tell us the figures for this year. When Stuart was talking, what is the figure for this year? Tell us. All you're boasting about last year and last year. Last year has gone. What is the figures for 2026? We are about 26 by my count. One man just said 22. But sometimes his figures are a little delayed. And I'm going based on what I read just a couple hours ago. And I saw, let me see if I get this here. Where did I save this? Slower. Where is it? I saw an article in one of the newspapers which said that the murder figure year to date is higher than what it was for the same period last year under the PNM. And we were under a state of emergency. Don't forget, the PNM implemented a state of emergency on the 30th of December, right? And so the murder figures so far for this year is higher than what it was for the same period last year under the PNM. So when they like to talk, well, PNM, murders has go up under the PNM and the PNM in power. Well, yeah, what? Right now, PNM running a distant second based on year-to-date figures. You all are ahead. You all have had a running state of emergency since July last year. PNM one wasn't that long. Okay? So talk about that. When all they want to talk about crime under the PNM, talk about that. Let's not hide it. Let's do a comparative of how many kidnappings took place under the PNM in their last year and how many took place under the UNC. Since they came into office, all of a sudden you're hearing about kidnappings. Home invasions. Apparently, the criminals didn't hear that stand your ground is now law. So, why are we still hearing about home invasions? We could read. I don't have the time right now, but I'll tell you, there were quite a few that I came across yesterday. Some man was woken up, he was sleeping, and an hour later, he heard his daughter screaming, and 3 men or 4 men with cutlasses came and they ransacked the house and tied up the family members and stole $15,000 in cash and jewelry and the family's station wagon and so on. I said, but what happened to stand your ground? I thought once that became law, the home invasion was supposed to end. Point to note as well. On Friday, the goodly Prime Minister announced, as I mentioned earlier, the legislative agenda for 2026. She spoke about the firearms legislation that they plan to bring. And she went into some detail about what aspects of the firearm users legislation they will be addressing. Disposal of firearms and blah, blah, blah. You know what she didn't mention? She mentioned nothing about amending the law to make it easier for law-abiding citizens to own firearms. She went down the list about 5 or 6 different things that they will be treating with when they bring that legislation, and no mention whatsoever about amending the law to make it easier for you law-abiding citizens to get your Matic so that you could load it up. And when the 2 or 3 armed men, masked men, kick down your door at 2 o'clock in the morning and they come to rape your wife and your daughter, that you could light them up, empty the clip, load up the Matic. Okay? So it looks like there's another promise that she is not going to fulfill, because You're a lawless dump. And remember, she said law-abiding citizens would get firearms, but apparently you all are lawless. You're living in a lawless dump, and therefore, if you all cannot obey simple road traffic laws, then you are not fit to own a firearm. You are lawless. Okay? So no gun for all here. So all who went and vote for them because they promised to give all a gun, and you all were expecting that when standing ground we're going to get a gun, no guns for all here. Don't forget that. Just thought I'd put that out there. All right? More disappointment coming in all your tail. When UNC wins. I'm going to take 1 or 2 calls before I jump out. Ah, boy. I'll tell you what you're doing. I am glad you raised that issue. All right? Because I saw what you saw, and yeah. I'll say that. All right? Yeah, so I saw what you saw. Right. And Super C, you as well. All right. No problem. I make no comment on that. Let me get this here. Yeah, you all could give me a couple of calls. What's the time there? All right. Yeah, probably take another 10 minutes, and if you wish to call in, you could do so. You all remind my number, I keep forgetting this number. So, is it 7701763? I think. Yeah, 7701763. So feel free if you want to join in. Where is Kishan Ali Teddy? When we ended last week, Kishan said he wanted to call in. I tell him wait till this week. I give him 1 second. Let me just turn this thing on here. Right, let me get this. So 1 second, caller. Turn that off. Right. Hello, good afternoon. Hello.
Hey, good afternoon to you. How are you doing?
I am good, and yourself?
Excellent show as usual.
Thank you.
You know what the AG should tell us, Mr. Roman? You should tell us that people has paid back all our loan to them.
I agree.
He didn't say that, did he?
Nope.
And I could tell you, I have a relative working in the company. People has paid back all the money that was lent to them by the state. Right?
Yes.
And that's why Mr. Pomel has come up. Mr. Pomel and a group of people like himself they never agreed to take the money that the government offers. And they are waiting to realize all the profits and all the returns on the EFPA policy.
Right.
And they are out there. In fact, one of the names called by the AG, my relative told me this, so a check was waiting for that particular individual in a 7-figure amount. You know what I'm saying, sir? And that person, who left the jurisdiction, like Mr. Dupree, they have never come to claim their interest or their claim on the EFPA funds. Understand?
Yes.
In fact, people is now involved in an exercise where people who have policies that will not service and so on are being written to come into the company to ask them what they want to do, whether they want to continue their investment or wrap it up. That is happening across the thousands of people, policy holders, right?
Yes.
And something that people are not aware of is that the Clico itself, the Clico company, was the entity keeping the CL financial empire afloat. And mind you, this was all built on the idea and the vision of a black man, Cyril Dupre. So when we talk about black people not being able to do business and so on, the legacy of Mr. Dupre in starting an insurance company for poor people who couldn't afford it, Clico was the insurance equivalent to the penny bank back in the day. You understand?
Yes.
It was a legacy institution. We haven't shown that today. Clico is our Caribbean Black Wall Street. You understand?
Yep.
That is what it was. So if the AG wants to come clean, you must come clean completely. And you know what's the next thing in the whole Clico imbroglio? There are players in the UNC, over the UNC administration, one Carlos, John, and Alan. What is the part that they played? Remember when Mr. Pate, the receptionist told us, I do pray. Remember that? People forget all these things. People forget all these things. And they must be reminded that, listen, if they go and look at the movie Too Big to Fail, an HBO production, they will understand how intertwined Clico was in the economy of the country. Not Clico really, but the CL Financial Group. And what are some of the windfall to the government? Angostura, Clico's Republic Bank shares, the Proman Group, all these things are what people have not taken into consideration of what came into the government's hands because of the agreement. So the government has still that healthy profit. In fact, Mr. Romain, Mr. T for this, when we talk about public servants not getting salary increases for 10 years, the Clico staff have not had a salary increase since 2006. How much is that, Mr. Romain?
20 years.
You must think about it.
20 years.
20 years. This will be 20 years. And my relative who is there is in a managerial position. On contract, of course, but this how long the staff has not had a under all these things. Not all these things. But people never talk about it and they don't consider it. So they are the worker ants on the ground in the high who are just there unrewarded for holding the cost. I just wanted to put these two parts out there, Mr. Romain, so people can understand.
Yes.
That it's not just the ordinary general public taxpayers of the country who are suffering, but also the families of the dedicated equal employees. Thank you for the opportunity, sir, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. As always. Meanwhile, the anniversary of the divers is just around the corner. Anybody could tell us when the government going to pay them? Have they gotten their workers' compensation from LMCS? Going on with that? Maybe, who knows? Maybe we might get some information a little later on. Just asking. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dominic.
Greetings.
It's a first time calling.
Welcome.
To Lego.
Welcome.
Yeah. Basically, it's very excited to talk to you. Yeah. So, I always listen to you because you're always a wise person and you have to teach us sometimes.
Thank you.
So I also kind of listen.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. I will.
Always for you. Always.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wilbos is asking, ask Kamala why they have their hand on First Citizens Bank and their intention with friends. You see, and there you go, that's the problem. People don't have confidence in this government. When you look at the people who they have put to serve on these boards of these institutions, the government's need for money. So we saw last week, they intend to borrow $1 billion on the international market, $1 billion US on the international market to repay other loans. All right. And of course, when you borrow in US, you have to pay back in US. Where is this US going to come from for repayment? We have no idea. Okay, because we see what's happening with Point Lisas, with Nutrien and all these other things. Nothing is happening with the refinery that they said they would reopen. All we know is that Munilal waiting to go to Suriname and Guyana for their energy conference in the hope that he could pitch and maybe find somebody who wants to, but I don't see it. And we see what's happening with Venezuela. So, hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir. Greetings.
Good afternoon, sir. Just 2 quick points.
Yes.
One, did you see the video that Marsha Walker put about the government plans to, illegal notice the government put out planning to borrow $1 billion from the international market?
Yes.
Where they plan, that wasn't in the budget statement, but it was in the books. Watching the debate in the Senate, an independent senator, Dr. Marlene Arts, raised that question.
Correct.
Reading from the book, they want to borrow about $19 billion. Right? Now, when they borrow money from the international market, when they pay it back, they have to pay back in US dollars.
Correct.
And what that will do is it will put a strain on our current reserves, weakening the value of our dollar. And I see no other alternative but us going to the IMF. Because they want to borrow something that they already promised to public servants.
Yes.
Right? And to do other stuff then that they so nonsense that they're doing. Or they still haven't account for the $1 billion that they borrow and draw down from the Heritage and Civilization Fund.
Correct.
Right? So I want to know, since they released this legal notice, what are your comments on this borrowing from the international market? And do you see a clear path of us going to the IMF? That's one. Also, one quick point again, I saw in the Express today that the government is going to buy about $1 billion US in US dollar note in the international market, also concerning some old US dollar notes that is going to for sale. And they're going to sell it for $1,000 per note, I think. Could you have you seen that report?
No, I haven't.
Expound on that, please, sir.
I didn't.
Good program as always.
Thank you.
Respect to you, man.
Thank you. No, I wasn't aware of that one, so I'll have to check up. I'll have to do some research on that one. Now, with respect to this borrowing of $1 billion US on the international market, so I'll tell you, it speaks to 2 things. One, that liquidity on the local market is such that the government cannot access that money here. Because if you're going to do it through the issuance of bonds with a particular coupon rate, no. One would think that you would, you wouldn't be able to get US here. But if you were to raise a bond for the equivalent of $1 billion US in Trinidad, institutional investors who are looking for investments with a decent rate of return, fixed income, would probably gravitate towards it, and you could open it up to the average citizen as well. So it tells me that the reason why they're going on the international market to borrow $1 billion US is because the country's foreign reserves continues to decline, and they need money to show up to get the foreign reserves back up over 5 billion US, because right now it's about 4.6. And that doesn't augur well for our country's credit rating. So that when the rating agencies, S&P and Moody's and these people, they look at all of these things, right? And here we are 9 months in, and We've not seen any growth in the country's foreign reserves. All we've seen is a decline, because it went from 5.2 when the PNM left office in April to 4.6 in the space of 9 months. And there's a likelihood that it's going to continue to fall even further. So you borrow $1 billion, you get it, you put it in the reserves, and the equivalent, you use it to pay whatever needs to be paid and so on, TT equivalent, and you pay on whatever as the case may be, right? But at least your reserves are artificially propped up. But that reserve didn't come from economic activity, but rather borrowing. I remember they used to accuse the former administration of doing these things. All the things that they tell you the last administration was doing was so bad and so terrible. Ralph Marad writing article week after week, and the PNM this and the PNM that. And where is he now to speak on this? What is their diversification plan? 9 months in, what is it exactly? Is it agriculture? Is it tourism? Is it, I don't know. What else is there? What is their plan? We have no idea. What we're focusing on is the energy sector, so we're keeping our fingers crossed. ExxonMobil, hopefully they will find some oil and probably find some gas. We're keeping our fingers, toes, and everything else crossed that maybe somehow Donald Trump will come to our rescue and help us out with getting Dragon. But that doesn't seem to be the case right now, because Mr. Trump's attention has now turned away from the Caribbean and is now focused on Greenland and Europe. All right, Maduro is gone, and we see Delcy Rodriguez is now seeking to establish her dominance. And in Venezuela, she would have gotten rid of certain persons who she sees as being threats to her presidency. All right, certain figures who were very prominent under Mr. Maduro have now been dismissed and have been replaced. And she seems to be, and notwithstanding the fact that Ms. Machado would have the opposition leader, that is, who is supposedly the rightful president, who supposedly won the election, she would have given Donald Trump her Nobel Peace Prize award last week, probably in the hope of curry favor, so that he would, reciprocate by installing her as the rightful president of Venezuela. But Mr. Trump would have thanked her for her generosity, and other than an audience with him, that's just about it. Doesn't seem as if she's going to be installed anytime soon, if at all. And Mr. Trump is on record as having said that the US is going to be a part of the governance structure of Venezuela for some time to come. So anybody who is hoping for a return to democracy under Ms. Machado, well, I mean, I think that was the last card she had to play to give Mr. Trump the Nobel Peace Prize award, and it didn't pan out for her the way that she wanted, so I don't think she has any other cards to play. So, yeah. And Mr. Trump is already on record as having said that Ms. Machado she does not have the respect or the support on the ground in Venezuela to be the president. So it seems that for the time being going forward, Delcy Rodriguez, who was vilified significantly by the current government of Trinidad and Tobago when they were in opposition, will be sitting behind the official presidential desk in Miraflores for some time to come, and she's well acquainted with Mrs. Posada Bisesa, and other members of her government, and not in a good way. All right? Not in a good way. So always saying, yeah, well, Trump will help us and rescue us, and we're gonna get Dragon because Maduro gone and that, and okay. We'll see how that goes. So I really see, businesses are closing down. There's a burger joint on Arepita Avenue that closed its doors. We saw the Bocas restaurant downtown is closing its doors. A lot of businesses feeling the pressure from the government's decision to increase the cost of alcohol, right? So bars are closing down. People are losing their jobs, left, right, and center. And so while the supporters of that party might dismiss, no big thing, and trying to find all other reasons as to why these businesses are closing rather than the obvious. Yeah, it's happening. So, and each business that closes is somebody, people losing their jobs. Right? I could tell you I have clients who were prospering. They had no affiliation with the last administration, but their businesses were doing well because people had money. Now, in the space of just mere months, they've seen the turn of the tide. And now some of them are looking at having to shut their doors, close their businesses. All right? Because as the UNC supporters, nothing happening. Nothing happening. But ministers flaunting, and so you see Phillips' conundrum last week, where a gentleman who worked hard with him, who I've spoken about, Jason De Silva, who was head on heels with him during the campaign and so on, and who's been very critical of this government and Mr. Alexander. So Mr. Alexander did a live, as he's accustomed doing, driving, but on your phone. It seems like he can't do lives anywhere else except when he's in his vehicle while driving. And coming out of that, he made some statement. You have no house, you have no job, you have no this, you have no that, and you want to tell the government how to run the country, and so on and so on. And the interpretation is that message was meant for this individual. And so a lot of pro-UNC social media activists and influencers have now come out against Mr. Alexander, and by extension, the government of which he's a part. All right? The other day he had his big party at Killarney, Stormyers Castle. When one look at the composition of the guests, none of the ghetto fellas who he pretends to speak for were invited. I didn't see Mr. De Silva there. Anybody, when you look at his people of a certain ilk, some of whom are perhaps 1%, the same 1% that he is always talking about and seeking to attack. I see David Naked is attacking Pan Trinbago and Beverly Ramsey Moore. I hope he knows what tree he's backing up, because Beverly Ramsey Moore ain't easy. Okay? But, yeah. I'm going to take this last one here. Eric, if you're planning to call me, do so quickly. I know you. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Dominic. How are you?
Hi, good man.
All right, Dominic. Dominic, you continue your program. You're going good. I don't know too much topic I cover, but with respect to the election, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is that they are happy with the Blue Wave Party, then so be it.
Yes.
We can't force it to make people to change their mind. They'll be comfortable with that. But as you know, history has a way of a cycle. When PNM is down, they always bounce back. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But like I say again, PR is a hell of a thing, because this is my opinion. Once the PNM was those two sisters, Mr. Watson Duke and Mr. Farid Watson, the last election, I think I was in 2017, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that should be an alarm bell that, hey, we gotta go our house in order, because these two guys now have a foothold in Tobago, and they see what the propaganda spread. It was from 10, it was from 12, then it dropped down to 10, then it was 6-6, and then you had the change of boundaries, they had 14-1, and now it's 15+.
Yes.
So I think this is an eye-opener, and I think there's a lot of soul switching, and hopefully, I don't know, maybe it could happen within the next few years or so. Unfortunately, we have Mr. Sharif Watson and party at least alive, and I don't know if we're all going to be what Mr. Watson did at all. You know, I just hope that he's not going to cause any mischief in the upcoming local government election.
You can't.
Another thing too, I think, I don't know if you mentioned this fortune teller lady who's very upset with Kamala, saying that she felt betrayed.
Yasina, yes.
The so-called, what's her name is?
Yasina Gonzalez.
You met Gonzalez, right? How come people didn't realize that she would have supported the UNC? If I'm not mistaken, did she support the UNC like that?
Yes, at one time.
Right. So, come to me, no surprise, I think I've seen a parallel between her and the lady who won the Nobel Peace Prize, and she wanted to give the Peace Prize to Trump. So maybe she should go and come and ask her for the flowers back. If they come and give back the flowers to her. Hold on, like, with it, and like I said again, I think the party should raise itself for election because it's what's going on with that scheme trust. I think it's probably due on the 2027, but going through what's going on with the government, they might probably have a early local on the election. I don't know how true it is.
Yes.
So I think you and your party have to prepare yourself, and prepare for the best. I guess that you have to retain your population and not to lose your seats.
Correct.
Right? Particularly the Santan Corporation, Tuna, and hopefully, I don't know, but you'll get American or you get Pakistan and the regional corporation. I don't know what's going on with Sandy Gandhi. It is very, very unfortunate. And this is the problem with Vietnam. I mean, the UNC has at least 18 or 19 to 30. Vietnam, we had a struggle with at least 10 to 13 seats. Until we could make that at least 10. That is how it's supposed to be done, Nick.
Yes.
Right? And I will be very saddened if we can get back the seats of Point Bottom, Labrie, and Mahokata Del Paro. And Sandy Gandhi. Right?
Yep.
And like I say, you know, it's not a plan because we can't defend, let's face it, we can't defend only two seats of Tobago East and Tobago West. Those constituents is very different from Trinidad. They move with the flow. Right?
Yeah.
And we have to focus on what we have here in Trinidad. All right, so we'll make you all with it.
You too.
All right.
Thank you. I will also add, meanwhile, you all remember the clip I played with Philip Alexander the other day when he was talking about this new pilot project that they have where they hire 220 persons to cut grass and clean drains and stuff around the country. This pilot, that program that is supposed to possibly replace CPEP, URP. Well, I can tell you that 1 month later, since this project started, persons who have been working have not been paid. 1 month later, no pay. Right? And they just keep telling them, you get paid on the 15th. One of the persons whose name I submitted, I spoke to him a couple of days ago, and he told me the last they heard they were going to get paid on the 15th. 15th has come and gone, no pay. And these people spend their money to buy tools, to buy uniforms, and other things to be able to do this work, and they were boasting. And the reason why I asked him that question, I messaged him while I was in Parliament on Friday, because when I listened to the Minister for Local Government and answering some question and so on, and talking about these people, was it Khadija Boy or was it Sturge? One of them, talking about they've been paid and better wages and so on and so on. They have not been paid. You all make the people take the little pittance that they had to buy equipment, buy uniforms, to come and work. They have to find money to leave home every morning to get to the meeting point, to meet the maxi or the bus or whatever it is, to take them to wherever they have to go and do the day's task and come back. And now, a month later, no pay. No pay. But all Boston. And Philip, this was supposed to be the program that would mash up this, going and kill the PNM. All the 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 people the PNM talking about who lost their jobs. All of them going to be gainfully employed. Really? And you get paid last month? You getting paid this week? And you getting plenty more than what they getting. Khadija got paid last month, and she getting paid at the end of this week, I believe. And all of you all getting plenty more than these people. Right? But you can't pay them. You have no excuse. You paid on time. Meanwhile, I forgot to mention, one of the other bills that we debated on Friday was the amendment to the THA Act, where there's going to be an increase in the number of secretaries. I think from 7, they're going to 11 secretaries now. We supported the legislation. It's interesting that the Fali Augustine administration, for the last 4 years, they were able to run the THA supposedly effectively with 7 secretaries. But now 7 is not enough, and we need 11. And we're going to be creating new departments, new divisions, one of which is going to be the division, I think, of legal affairs or something like that. And according to Mr. Augustine, that person who's going to be that secretary is going to be like the Attorney General for Tobago. So quietly they're setting up, their Tobago government. He was obviously the government of Tobago. I wouldn't be surprised if the next amendment that comes is for them to change the name of Chief Secretary to probably Premier or something like that. Something a little more fitting. Because remember, now they control the entire assembly. There is no opposition voice in the assembly. Mr. Duke is gone and Mr. Morris is gone. So it's just TPP alone in the chamber, himself to himself, talking to himself. There is nobody to challenge anything. So they just come, they pass their whatever it is, and they do what they want. There is no in-house check and balance. All right? And it seems they are building a sycophantic following among their membership as well, similar to that of the UNC. When I listen to some of the utterances of some of their supporters on social media, people like Bernie, Jack Craig, and others. But, hands off. Tobago made their choice. Congratulations to you. And let's see what the next 4 years brings. Hopefully we can see some sort of diversification on the island. Maybe you all might get some new 4-star and 5-star hotels because there's no PNM now too, as you will claim. Dr. Rowley, while he was Prime Minister, had said he would broach no opposition with respect to the construction of the Marriott Hotel in Rocky Bay, is it? Well, he's no longer Prime Minister, so he can't treat with any opposition. So it's left up to this government and Farley and they too. Hopefully we will get some sort of update on what's happening with Sandals. Has there been any engagement? Anybody reach out to Sandals for an update as to whether or not they're going to consider nothing on the horizon in terms of a second meeting or as the case may be? That didn't feature prominently in the election campaign. Tobagonians don't seem to care. No questions asked. All right, I keep making the point. One of the challenges that Tobago's tourism sector faces is the inadequacy of room stock and quality room stock at that. 4-star and 5-star. Okay? Magdalena Grande, the last administration has set aside some 56 million to do much needed renovations because the last time I went to Magdalena, I can tell you, it was in a mess. Seeing fallen, concrete falling and all kind of things. So it was totally ridiculous. Let me see if this gentleman wishes to make an intervention. Sir, how are you?
Not too bad. Am I live on air?
Yes, you are.
I'm listening to the program and about Faris Alwari and his, when he excluded himself from the. I think he should make a statement to clear what the Attorney General said in the Parliament.
I'm sure he will.
He should not. He should never let that pass through because this. I wanted to use a term, but I wouldn't use it, because this guy should not get away with those things because they're giving people false information and the people will believe it and run away with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Faris should forcefully do that. And my second issue is with reference to this this law that they just passed, the zone of whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the opposition should take that matter to the court all the way to the Privy Council because this is what they did when they were in opposition.
Yes.
I remember the bail deal and all those things, the laws that the government, they had the people taking those matters up to the Privy Council. And I think the opposition should do the same.
Yeah.
For satisfaction. Anyway, have a good day. I'm listening.
You too, sir. Thank you. My good friend Ambrose there from out in New York. Yeah. So we now need, as I was saying, 11. They need 11 secretaries. Of course, more secretaries means more divisions. So we have to pay more salaries because there's more secretaries, and the salary of a secretary is more than an assistant secretary, and you get paid as an assemblyman or a councillor to be. So you get paid as an assemblyman and you get paid as a secretary. And if you increase the numbers, it means everybody could be secretaries. So it's more money. And the interesting thing about that, and I'm not complaining, right? All right. I'd love to know when the conversation was had between Farley and the government to bring this amendment, because the election was on Monday and we got the notice on Wednesday that this was going to be debated. So clearly this was discussed before the election. I say if they win, they would do that. So intentions were had. So just better pass now this week in the upper house, and then Mr. Augustine can appoint his additional secretaries and the like. Now, the expenditure for these additional secretaries and these new divisions, because when you have a new division, you have to hire people, which is good, creating employment, but you also need to have money to rent office space. You need money for vehicles and all of these other things that attend to that, which was not in the budget. And while they talk about, they had an issue with Stuart Young and his pension, and because that would be a drain on the treasury to be paying Dr. Rowley a pension and Stuart Young a pension. They have money for that, but you're going to hire additional secretaries now, and their salary is going to cost more than what Stuart Young pension was. But we have money for that. But okay, it's all good. Maybe it's with the better governance of Tobago, right? Hello.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
I know he was going to call just as I look into wrap up.
Well, I cannot join on late now, so I know I'm missing the program. I know no promote TV and so on things. I know no join on late. My apology, but I won't say long.
Quite all right.
Right. Good afternoon to all the listeners, callers, viewers. This Sunday afternoon into evening. I don't know where to start it off. 9 months later.
Yes.
I don't know where to start after. I don't know where to begin. But all I have to say, at the end, prior to April 20 last year, they were warned.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? And this is they always say it takes a woman 9 months to birth a child, right?
Yes.
So this 9 months here is the birth of the child. And 4 years down the road is the destruction of the child. So I hope and pray that the 4 years down the road, Trinidad and Tobago will be able to see its way, because at the rate this dictatorship government is going, when they leave office, it would have no Trinidad. And right now, Mr. Roman, it have a lot. That's right. As far as China, what do you know what going on in China to Tobago? As far as China, what do you know what is going on with the governance in this country? Right now, we are in the international spotlight, not for the positive enough, for all the negative. Thanks to who? The Prime Minister of this country. You decide, and hear what? I am not apologizing for nothing, because my stance is with the US. So me and care, me and business about the population. Whatever I say goes. The same thing they accuse Dr. Rowley with, oh, he's a dictator, he's this. They call Manning Empire, they call this is Manning Mugabe. All kind of names they call former Prime Minister and PM leaders. What Kamala is? What Kamala Prasad is? I am not giving no title as no honorable or no Prime Minister. She's worthy of it. Because all they're doing things with all the knowledge of the population who would have elected all year, give only 28 seats. Right? Give only 20 a mandate. Because people felt that under the last administration, they were suffering, things were hard, and we catching with Aunt, Uncle, Nenen, and Bauji. But not a word from none of them now. All the union leaders, all the activists, everybody know they are pep. They can't talk. You know why? The same government that all was cussing out the previous time, hoping that things would have been better now. Where's Felicia Thomas? Where's Felicia Thomas? You're on state board, so you don't care about public servants. Where's Ansel Roger? Where's Guy Clyde Elder? Where's Leroy Baptiste? Where's Ernesto Kesa? All of these people who are calling here, who was the mouthpiece for the population and the distrust and the disgust and the dictatorship of Dr. Rowley.
what it is today. When Liberty is today, when all these people getting laid off left, right, and center, you ain't hear a word from none of them. But Dominic, when UNC wins, everybody wins. But I still don't win after 9 months. Me ain't winning. You winning?
Nope.
Well, I'm guessing that I think Jason and all of them social media mouthpieces, them winning. I am not feeling sorry for none of these people. You know why? These were the same set of people, night after night, day after day. They cost Dr. Roddy, they cost George Young, they cost Emwood, they cost everybody in the PNM. I am not feeling sorry for Jason De Silva. You didn't take that and live with it. The same member of parliament who's there now, Stuart Richard Young, you had nothing good to say about Stuart Young. But I know one thing, that what Stuart would have done, you would have never did what this clown, P-Brain, would have done alive. You understand? And that is what we have to understand. You never know where you have until you lose it. And a lot of people going forward go expect going the lost work. Everything. That's why they want to bring this whatever they call it.
Yes.
This whatever. Because they realize that here what? When the SOE comes down and the 31st of this one, it's in 2 weeks' time. We have to put something in place to keep African people on the East-West corridor at bay. This also thing they want to implement is not in the UNC areas, it's predominantly the 13 opposition members. They want to put that so thing. It's not about dealing with the crime and the this and that. It's mostly African people who support the PNM. I tell you as is MP, I tell you as is. They're not going to stay, they're just only staying there because they want to give it's a crime and a thing. But this is Muslim African people who support the PNM. Why you think this fines thing? They thought this high fines would affect PNM people alone. And when they realize the people come out and started talking about it, that's why they started to roll back. You understand? This government is running this country on racialism, divisiveness, vindictiveness, and apartheid. That's how they're running this country. And if people want to sit down, I want to say, what we gonna do? What we gonna do? This is the time to come out and tell them we had enough. You see what happened in Nepal? Take pattern from Nepal, people. Nepal, take pattern. Right? I don't call it no things like that, but take pattern. We are the electorate, we are the government, 1.5 billion of us is the government. We put them there. So we have all rights to take them back out. You understand?
Yes.
But like I say, when UNC wins, nobody wins.
Correct. Suffering begins.
Good program. No further listening.
Thank you. All right, so just see here. Promoters up for smaller fets amid cost surge. Promoters are contending with venue shortages, a 100% increase in alcohol prices, higher food costs, and rising infrastructure expenses, forcing a shift away from large-scale formats towards smaller, premium, and tightly managed offerings. According to the data compiled by the Ticket Federation Carnival Calendar 2026, fewer than 150 fets are expected to be staged for Carnival 2026. And this represents a significant contraction from Carnival 2025 when the PNM was still in office, when 254 fets were held across the season. Notably, February 2025 alone accounted for 152 events, a figure that exceeds the projected number of fets for the entire 2026 season. Ticket Federation data shows 67 fets listed for January 26, compared with 35 in January 2025. TF explained that the increase reflects the shorter carnival season this year, which has only 7 carnival weekends compared to the usual 10, and events that would normally fall in February have been pulled forward into January, Carnival Monday and Tuesday, right? So while they're boasting, let me see. While they're boasting about there was a 42% decline in the number of murders last year, it seems this year there's a 42% decline in the number of feds. You know what that means? Everybody who normally work these little feds and they get a little extra something, you know, a little side hustle, whether it is all-inclusive fed, yeah, work in the bar, food, as the case may be. Now, all these people, salt for you. All right? Promoters and suppliers view the figures as evidence of a market that is consolidating under sustained cost pressure. And but we're talking about, Michelle Benjamin talking about we have a bumper carnival and the best, and will truly showcase Trinidad and Tobago as being the mecca of carnival and all of that rubbish. And their big thing is this flavor, whatever that they have in the savannah there, where they set up a food court in the savannah, and some of the vendors were complaining and so on. And so they've had a bumper night, couple nights, because the John Cupid Carnival Village, they've been bringing out a few artists, and of course it's free, so people will come looking for entertainment, right? And not everybody have money to go to fets, and you know the fets that would normally, do they even have army fet this year and so on? You know, the fets that would normally attract, well, not a certain, not that the usual, not the all-inclusive party ilk. But a lot of these people, I know some of them who are CPF workers and so on, saving their little money, throwing their susu and whatnot, and save their money to go to maybe 1 or 2 fets. So we're seeing the impact of that. But they boasting. I saw Philip Alexander do a video saying, yeah, look at flavor, hot, look at people, and all of that. Yeah, you have free entertainment, and you're bringing a lot of these artists who would have been singing for the UNC during the campaign. We don't know how much you're all paying them to come, because they're not all ambassadors, B-Mobile ambassadors and so on, so they can't sing for free. So money has to be spent to pay them. Okay? But they coming out. But you read it there. Carnival is taking a hit where much of the money is made. And then on top of that, you have another story. Restaurants feeling the pinch of higher prices, but don't tell the UNC that, because then they say it's PNM propaganda. Across Trinidad and Tobago, the rising tide of inflation is hitting hardest at the dinner table. For food establishments, the challenge is even steeper, absorbing relentless cost increases while keeping meals affordable for customers who rely on them. Now, many outlets have reached their breaking point. With operating expenses climbing, they are compelled to raise prices simply to stay afloat. In the Economic Data Pack released in December 2025 by Central Bank, the latest consumer price index figures confirm what businesses have long suspected: inflation is not easing. And an analysis of the data showed food prices generally trended downward from July to October, but November marked a clear turnaround, with several food items recording noticeable price increases. The upward movement was largely driven by higher prices for several commonly purchased food items, including fresh whole chicken, parboiled rice, tomatoes, fresh carrot, plantains, eggs, onions, green sweet peppers, chilled frozen turkey parts, and other chilled or frozen pork products. I thought the removal of VAT on 7,000 food items was supposed to bring down the cost of living. Where are the UNC supporters? Removal of VAT. Kamala told you all before she became Prime Minister, that's the solution. Remove VAT on 7,000 food items. But yet still, El Pecos last couple of weeks ago, I saw they put up a notice that they're increasing the cost per pound of food because of increased costs, aside from ingredients. Don't forget the cost of the 100-pound cylinders also went up significantly, and they use those cylinders, so prices going up. So those establishments as well are going to be impacted. But when UNC wins, who wins? But the supporters continuing to praise, oh, the best government ever, and yes, the country is on the right track. But we were doing better under the PNM, and these bastards, these hypocrites were saying, and Rowley mash up the economy, and Imbert mash up the economy, and the PNM mash up the economy. But you weren't seeing articles like these. But then they quick to say it's 1% media reporting that because they want to make the UNC look bad. So how come you all don't have any media supporting the UNC? How come? Why no media house wants to support the UNC? So what you all have to do now is to go and fake it. Fakery in the bakery. You're padding the government media houses with a set of lackeys, a set of propagandists, UNC propagandists who playing, they having talk show for 2 and 3 hours for the day, to come and promote the government and the foolishness at the expense of taxpayers, right? Because you're not getting the traditional media houses to support you all, to lie. And that's why all of X, all of it is 1% media and Sabga media talking foolishness. They're reporting what you all don't want to report, but don't worry, time longer than twine. Continue. We'll see where that goes. So folks, thank you all again for joining me this Sunday. Always a pleasure. You're correct, Wilbos. Who eating grass now? Yeah. Anne-Marie Arthur is saying, come out and enjoy Carnival and Panorama or culture. She can't stop. So true. You all do that because you don't know if you might still get a Independence Parade this year again. Okay, because with the murder rate being higher than it was for the same period last year, in their desperation, not to score a record in terms of the number of murders, because remember they say crime does only go up under the PNM when the PNM in office. But so far for this year, they surpassed the PNM from last year. So that puts a spoke in the wheel with that. So they cannot allow the murder rate to run away. And so they will do whatever is necessary, even if it means curtailing your freedom of movement. So enjoy your carnival, folks. All right. If you have money, those of you who have a little kakada saved and you could afford to go on maybe a fete or two, you could jump out. All right. And for those of you who can't, I don't know what to tell you. I can't be optimistic and say things will get better anytime soon because this clueless government has no idea what it is that they're doing. All right. So I think PNM Fete is next week. Not this week, coming week, the following 26, I believe it is. All right. So come out. It's at the I think it's the Lions Civic Center or something. I'll confirm that and I'll let you all know. All right. But yeah, so the PNM Fete is on. And what we have this week, boy, I think we have the Mix and Mingle, where we meet with members of the media. So we will keep you all updated with respect to that. Jerome Marshall is saying this will be the worst carnival. It will be a dead carnival. When PNM was in office, we used to see carnival. You know, interestingly, the same Jason De Silva, who used to cost the PNM left, right, and center, where I did with Philip. It's interesting to see he did a live a couple of days ago, and he was saying, you know, in around Christmas time, the PNM, he said, oh, the PNM this thing, but the PNM is still like money, and 50 million would have been put out into the economy, and people would have benefited, and carnival come in, and you know, people would have set up their stalls, and they would have things under this UNC. Nothing happening. Nothing. One by one, they're starting to see the light, and it's only been 8.5 months, folks. Saddle up. We still have 4.5 years to go. I tell you. I think it's difficult outside dealing with them. Imagine after dealing with them inside the parliament. Folks, enjoy the rest of it. Good Dalzin is saying 23 murders. So it's around that good, but I think there's an additional 3 because, as I said, I saw a couple of newspapers reported, I think a couple overnight murders, and they would have announced as well the young man who went missing after some family engagement. He went and stayed back to meet with some girl. He went missing. His phone was found, whatnot. And I think his body was found today. So he too was murdered. And the police said, based on the descriptive person that they found somewhere up in the east, I think they believe to be this young man. Right? So might be between 23 and 26 murders so far for the year. Certainly more than it was last year at the same time. Claire is saying, I'm affiliated to a bread and breakfast and not yet sold out for Carnival 2026. You see? And you have Michelle Benjamin at her press conference this morning saying there's no accommodation available. So if at this stage you want to get accommodation in Trinidad, there is none to be had. Really, Michelle? Where you get that data from? So you can come and talk that rubbish. Because again, you will continue to hold press conferences, ministers speaking from a ministerial position, but you're having your press conferences at the UNC's headquarters. And in order for people to see it live, you need to go on the UNC's Facebook page and the UNC's YouTube page. Well, you're mad trying to draw viewership. Keep it. We'll get the summary and the evening news. So it's most unfortunate, but yeah, another young life. Look, I think this guy was just 25 or 26 years old, right? And now he's gone. Another statistic, and a clueless government whose solution to the crime is special zones. So people, residents of Rich Plains saying, we don't want that here. While the government has not named any areas yet, the people who live in these areas already know that they are going to be targeted, and they're letting the government know, hey, we're not playing that. Leave us alone. Okay, but don't worry, the PNM will stand in defense. So get your walking shoes ready, folks, because as soon as this SOE is lifted, we're hitting the road. All right? Enough is enough. Ayuda Joshua was being yes, David Welch is another one. I will treat with him on another day. He and this one called Ringleader. All how another one, Opinion Box. You can see them all tripping over themselves to defend foolishness. It's amazing, eh? That these people who supposedly stood in defense of the small man and the poor man are now trying to defend the extortion of the same small man who they fought the PNM against. Shame on all here. U.S. military aircraft was seen leaving Trinidad during removal. I haven't had opportunity, PF, to read it, but I will do so, and I will touch on it at the next. I just saw the headline, but I will touch on it on the next live, because it basically again puts light to what the Prime Minister was saying. All the excuses, oh, we had nothing to do with that, we played no part in that, we played no role in that, Trinidad Tobago, this, that, the other, and the next, and slowly and surely, all of their lies are unraveling, and they don't even seem to care to be able to defend it anymore. Patricia Batista is saying, I fly standby and there's so much seat available for flights. yes, and Michelle saying, all the CAL flights have no room, they're full. Liar. I tell you. Folks, we'll chat again next Sunday, all right? Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and have a productive week. And we'll chat again soon.